streaming? I need to go grab my phone. Okay, I want to make sure we're streaming. Oh, thank you, PlayStation. Da, 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 da. Oh, okay, we are streaming. Okay, perfect. Okay. Hi. Today we're gonna be reacting to the Love and Deepspace. I think that's what the thing is called. Drama because it seems interesting. I'm very curious about what's happening in that regard. I saw a VTuber channel upload about the Love and Deepspace situation. I think we're gonna react to his video. Hopefully nothing goes wrong with that. He's basically just like covering the drama of the video of the that's going on. So I thought we would react to his video. I hope nothing is wrong with that. So let's just see. Well, I already watched this video, as you can see, but I want to kind of react to it on stream, even though I've already watched it, just because. So let's do that.
If I had a dollar for every time a Chinese gacha game player showed up to the development studio of their favorite game while holding a knife with the intention of assassinating staff there, then I'd be at least $2 richer. And what's crazy here is that this second dollar would be given to me as recently as June 2026, when that exact happened. But as a bonus, it also came bundled with a package of literal cow shit, vandalism, and a large police response. Love and Deepspace is the most successful female targeting gacha game of all time, easily able to earn tens of millions of dollars on any given month of the year. They were, without exaggeration, on top of the world with no competition.
Okay, okay. Hi Rexy. Hello, baby girl. Before even getting super into this, I only recently learned about what Love and Deepspace is from the Genshin Impact community, so I don't even like. Was it the Genshin Impact? I have no idea. I know nothing about this game other than it took like 100 and something gigabytes to download, so I just never committed to downloading it. Even though I wanted to try it, I'm very big on gacha games. I love gacha games. I never got into it, so.
Whatsoever until one day they decide to shoot themselves in the foot with a fully loaded shotgun. 1 week after announcing the biggest update the game has had in a very long time, they do something unprecedented.
Okay, I don't want to get like hated. This game is so. I don't know. I can't say much. I'm a Genshin Impact lover, so I don't know. This game just feels very silly. Is that the word I'm looking for? I have no idea. This is very silly though. These scenes are something. That's all I'll say.
Going back on their word and canceling the entire update. The immeasurable disappointment their community felt would spark one of the biggest and most impressive global efforts in gacha game history, uniting people all across the globe to buy up entire city billboards, donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to charity, and even convincing Queso, of all people, to spread awareness about this injustice.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Once you include like big time content creators and like start buying out billboards to try to prove your point, I think you're cooked. Not like the community is cooked. I think the company that made Love and Deep Space is cooked because you have to like theoretically they would have to listen to their community at this point, right? like if their community is making petitions and stuff, isn't the whole point of a petition to make somebody believe, or not make somebody believe, but like make somebody do something because of like common democracy or whatever, or like the common goal. Like if somebody makes like a petition to like get a law reversed, like you'd have to listen if they got enough signups. And I'm pretty sure it's mentioned that they got a lot of. Let me go back. I think.
1 week after an unprecedented, going back on their word and canceling the entire update. The immeasurable disappointment their community felt would spark one of the biggest and most impressive global efforts in gacha game history, uniting people all across the globe to buy up entire city billboards, donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to charity, and even convincing Queso, of all people, to spread awareness about this injustice.
Oh, it didn't mention the petition. I'm pretty sure it mentions the petition later on in the video. But that's crazy though. $200,000 towards this like trying to bring a character back is freaking crazy. And like really shows the lengths that people will go to like make up. Okay, thanks Rexy. Thank you. Thank you Rexy for walking across my computer. You're so nice. I love you, baby girl. Uh yeah, I think like the fact that they made $200,000 to because of like how upset they were about this just proves that the Love and Deep Space community really messed up. I think not the community, sorry, the Love and Deep Space devs, I think, really messed up with
To
this.
spread awareness about this injustice. And bear in mind, this is all truly nothing more than the tip of this iceberg, as it's easily one of the most complex topics I have ever covered on this channel. But it's not like I had a choice, seeing that my own community had left over 14,000 messages about this topic in my Discord server, and even went as far as compiling an amazing Google Doc about it. And so, why did this money printing machine decide to destroy itself? And how did this become a worldwide phenomenon? Well, without further ado, let's do this. Alright, so most people agree that the first gacha game came out in 2010 and was developed by Konami. It was called Dragon Collection. The best way to describe it was kind of like a knockoff Pokemon, where you went from dungeon to dungeon and collected as many monsters as possible. And in between certain levels, you'd receive a luck-based treasure chest that has the ability of giving you some really rare items that can boost your stats like crazy. And if you wanted to open more of these treasure chests now without having to go through other levels, then you could pay money to buy them. This simple mechanic that wasn't really popular at the time would change Konami forever. By 2012,
Was the game called Konami, or was it like was the game called Konami, or was the creator named Konami? Konami full 1 year profits were boosted by the growth of its social games, far outpacing revenue growth. Year profits soared thanks to growth in social games. Regardless, that's impressive that this is the first official like considered gotcha game. Especially like with the amount of gotcha games and how popular gotcha games are nowadays, I think that's really freaking cool that that's um like I think that's really freaking cool that that's what where it all started. And there's a little dragon too. I love dragons.
their console game sales were slipping, but their social games on social platforms like Greed, meant to be played on mobile like Dragon Collection, were defying every single expectation. By 2012, Konami's net income was up 80% thanks to this game and other games on social platforms. And this made other developers, of course, take notice. Why is Konami making so much money? How can we incorporate this into our games? And so,
I feel like gotcha games, like I feel like most games. No, 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 no. Thank you, Rexy. You're gonna knock over the camera. Rexy, no, come back over this way. Come here. Come over this way. Come over here, baby. Good girl. Girl. Um, please don't climb on the computer. Okay. I think it's very interesting that or sorry, no, I forgot what I lost my train of thought there. Most gotcha games, I think, or most games in general, weren't probably making much money back then because it was like most games it was like you bought the game, you played the game. There was no like in-game purchases. There was no microtransactions, that sort of stuff. Uh, and then um and then gotcha games kind of, I'm assuming this started the whole gotcha game thing where it was like in-game transactions or microtransactions, in-game currency, all that sort of stuff that you could buy, and like you could spend time grinding and then spending money, getting farther in the game, that sort of stuff. In-game cosmetics. I feel like most games back then it would have just been you bought the game, you played the game, you were done with the game kind of thing. There wasn't much replayability unless you were speedrunning or like um what's the word I'm looking for? Speedrunning or like doing challenges or and stuff like that. And it was like again, there was no in-game currency there, or there probably was in-game currency, but there wasn't like microtransactions to the same degree. It wasn't like nowadays where it's like I want a really cool character, so I'm gonna drop uh $400 to get this character. I'm gonna spend an absurd amount of money to uh commit to a character, that sort of stuff. Buy their weapons, that try to get a 5 star, that sort of stuff. I don't think that was very popular back then. Again, I didn't play video games back then though, so I wouldn't know.
Gacha would start to take over Japan, but it would remain in Japan for a while because, well, the entire concept was from there. The word gacha comes from the word gachapon, which is essentially a vending machine that you can find in many different places in Japan, with each one having a different themed set of toys, figurines, keychains, etc. And after placing money in it, essentially buying a pull, you'd be receiving something randomly from that set. Now, of course, some items in that set will have a very low drop rate, making them rare and very sought after. And the whole point is to keep buying pulls until you get what you want. And that's kind of how gacha.
I really want to go to Japan and like use one of these gachapon machines. We have stuff similar in Canada here, but it's like not as cool because you'd like it's like you walk around the mall and there be like these machines. I didn't know what they were called when I was younger, and you would like put a toonie or a loony into them and you would just get like a handful of candy, which was my childhood going through the mall, like going through the mall and being like, "Hey mom, could I spend one of your loonies or toonies and get a handful of candy?" And she'd be like, "That was really expensive for a handful of candy, but sure." And there were like other examples where there were like little keychain ones too, and they came in these like little like balls. It was like clear on top and had like a color on the bottom, and it was flat. It had like a little dome, and you would like open it up, and you would get your little toy inside. And I loved those. I loved going to movie theaters and spending like $10 to get a bunch of like little mini keychains that I never would use again because I didn't have anywhere to put them. That was like peak childhood, and I'd love to go to Japan to be able to check out a gachapon machine and like see where those types of things originated from. I think that'd be really cool.
Games work. Now, as I said, gacha games would remain niche and would be mostly focused on Japan for the longest time. But this, of course, would all change in 2020 when Genshin Impact would come out and bring gacha into the mainstream. Now, of course, it was helped quite a bit by releasing mid pandemic as everyone was locked up in their homes, but one could argue that the reason why it succeeded so well was because it felt like a full fledged game with gacha mechanics, rather than gacha mechanics with a game built around it.
So, actually, Genshin Impact was my first introduction to gacha games, which I think was really cool. I started playing in like April 2021. Um, the game has gotten so much better. I love the game so much. And it's so interesting to see that Genshin Impact kind of like introduced a lot of people in like my part of the world, like Canada, the States, like Western areas, to like gotcha games. My first actual like uh interaction with gotcha games though was Honkai Impact Third. I loved Honkai Impact Third. I think I played that before I played Genshin. I played it on mobile, and I love Kiana. Kiana is my queen, but
Due to all these elements combined, it still holds the Guinness World Record for fastest mobile game to reach $1 billion in revenue, achieving this feat in 178 days. And just to really illustrate how crazy this was, the previous record holder for this Guinness World Record was Pokemon Go. And that's not all, because Genshin Impact also holds
I I assumed that I knew that Pokemon Go would have been one of the like Guinness World Record holders for something, especially because there has been like periods of time where Pokemon Go had the highest search, um, like online repetitive search ever at one point. So, or at the time, it was the most searched thing, which I think was really cool.
another Guinness World Record, the fastest mobile game to reach $5 billion, which was held by Clash of Clans. And while it did rewrite certain expectations for gacha games, it didn't really rewrite the demographics that it was targeting. Gacha games have always been about targeting the single male with disposable income. One look at the characters that you can spend money on in some of the most popular gacha games in existence, and you understand very quickly that the targeted demographic has not changed. You don't even need to take my word for
I think that it could be argued that there is a lot of gacha games where the characters are made for the female gaze. There's a lot of characters in Genshin that I think are female and were made to what's the word I'm looking for? Appeal to women. Personally, I think Silali's new skin in Genshin, the one that like just came out recently, I love that skin. I think that that skin's very much targeted towards women. Well, not necessarily women, but I think it's targeted to like yeah, women. I think that that's really cool though that gacha games can do that. I think that I like when my games target me and my queerness, so I love seeing the really pretty women in games. So, um, I don't necessarily think that Genshin and Honkai Impact and stuff like that are specifically for the male gaze. I think it's kind of like it just happens to attract more males than it does females. But I love these characters with all my heart. I love my Sitlali. I love Sandrone. I love Columbina. These characters are amazing. So
for it. The CEO of Hoyoverse, the developer behind Genshin Impact, would, as far back as 2011, talk about this topic to investors. He'd say that the otaku have been suffering from huge psychological pressure and that they hope that they can play their games easily so that they can enjoy this feeling of being saved. He would then say that the games that they're making were specifically made for touchable devices because of a fairly innovative feature they came up with, which is the touch feature. Yep, it's fairly straightforward. This was for one of their first major games called Honkai Impact, and you could pretty much touch the very hot women they can pull for, and they'll react to it, which will also increase your friendship level with them, just like real life. But if you've played gacha games, if you've come across this logic, then you must have taken a step back at some point and asked yourself, yeah, I get it, the established demographic is men, but what about women? Yes, there's a lot of men that are lonely out there that would want companionship from a hot waifu. But let's not pretend that women don't want the same thing. I mean, come on, have you seen some of the books that some women read? One could argue that in some cases, they're even freakier than men. So where were the gacha games that were catering to their needs? Because they also had disposable income, and it seemed like no one was tapping into that. At least, not successfully. You see, there's always been a type of game that's existed since the early 2000s called an otome game. A story-based romance video game targeted towards women. Yes, these games would be monetized.
So I assume games like Obey would be an otome game. So like where there's literally no female characters in the game except for I think from when I played the game there was like I think her name was 13. She was in the game. But that was really it. All of the characters were kind of targeted towards the main character and the main character was a sheep so that you could like kind of put yourself in place of them.
They had varying degrees of success, but they were also extremely niche, never able to truly reach a mainstream audience. There would be multiple attempts by multiple developers to make a gacha game centered around the otome genre, but none would truly stand out. For example, even Hoyoverse, before releasing Genshin Impact, would release a game called Tears of Themis, targeting the female demographic specifically while incorporating a gacha system around it. And guess what? It didn't really
Themis. I didn't really like it, not because like the character designs in the game didn't feel very nice to me. I didn't really like them. I thought they were too like modernized. I would have rather like characters that were like super fantasy themed. I know the whole point of it from playing Tears of Themis, it was meant to be like um more like nowadays kind of thing where you like run into characters in like our day and age. Um I don't know, I think I'm just very used to like characters from Genshin Impact, the male characters, the female characters being very like extra with their appearance and their clothes and stuff like that and being like very fantasy and very well designed compared to Tears of Themis where it was like the characters were wearing suits and they were wearing jackets and they were wearing hoodies and all that sort of stuff. It just didn't feel as whimsical, and I really liked the whimsical vibe that a lot of the Hoyoverse games gave off. So I didn't really vibe with Tears of Themis, but I completely understand like trying to make a gotcha game centered around women and the focus being for women because there isn't a lot of games where I personally think that the demographic audience for the game is women. Um, Most of the time it's like the target audience for video games are like children or for teenagers or men. I can't really think of any games that the demographic audience is specifically targeting women. I could be wrong about that. I'd love to be corrected. I just like off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Maybe Minecraft. Minecraft is like kind of meant for everyone. I don't think it necessarily targets men over women. So, but there definitely should be more games where it's like targeting towards women, just like I think there should be more games where it's targeting towards like people of the queer community or people who are person of color and that sort of stuff. Like the more minority groups, I think there should be more games that are popular that target those types of demographics.
Really work out that well. It had released in China in July of 2020 and then globally on July 2021, and honestly, the revenue right now is so low that it can barely make a dent in their other titles. Like, it can't even make 10% of what Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail are making right now. And so the logic was, for many developers, that if even Hoyoverse can't make a successful Otome game targeting the female demographic, then who can? Well, that's where the developer Paper Games came in. Now here's the deal. Paper Games has been around for a while. Their first game came out in December 2012 in China. It was called Nikki Up to You Addressing Story, and from day one, they were targeting women. This was a dress-up game that was made for them. By 2015, they would release another game called Love Nikki, and for the first time would expand into Japan, the biggest gacha market. In 2017, they
I actually think I played Love Nikki. I actually think Love Nikki was a dress up game as well, right? I'm pretty sure I played that game when I was like a little kid. Um yeah, I don't know. Maybe it didn't come. I remember playing video games that were like the part of the Nikki series where it was like dressing up characters. I remember playing that when I was a kid and like loving those games. So,
would start taking a step in other directions by releasing the game Mr. Love Queen's Choice, a fairly standard 2D Otome game. Now yes, it would be niche and would be fairly successful, but more importantly, it would teach them priceless lessons for their magnum opus, a game that would change everything for them and the industry. In 2020, Paper Games would release a teaser trailer for their upcoming game called Love and Deepspace. And for any fans of Otome games, for any women out there that were hoping for a next generation experience, this caused a massive earthquake. This was the first 3D Otome game to ever exist, and at this level of insane quality. No one had done this before. No one was crazy enough to even come up with this idea. This shook the entire industry to its core, and many were very interested to see how it would end up performing once it would finally.
I think I've seen a very, very brief amount of gameplay around Love and Deepspace. It is a RPG fighter game, right? It's an Otome like fighting game. I'm pretty sure. I think I might be wrong about that. Like I said, I've seen like very minimal gameplay of the game, and it's mostly been like the memories and stuff. So like I feel like I remember though seeing somebody played the game and there being like actual fighting mechanics where you're like controlling the character and fighting. I could be completely wrong about that though. But I have this weird memory of seeing that.
Release. Here's the problem though, there was no release date whatsoever. They just dropped this teaser, created a massive earthquake in the industry, and just left. They would literally disappear, and people wouldn't hear any updates from them for years. That would be the reality until 2023, when something would finally come out from the studio, but it wasn't good news at all. News outlets would report that Paper Games was about to take on a loan of $70 million. And what was really interesting here is that the person giving them that loan was Hoyoverse, the creators of Genshin Impact. It turned out that Paper Games had overextended itself and was developing too many titles at once and ran out of money. So they asked Hoyoverse for a loan and Hoyoverse gave it. But the collateral was really interesting. If Paper Games had failed to pay Hoyoverse back their money by the agreed upon date, then Hoyoverse would get 10% of Paper Games' share, effectively owning 10% of the entire company. At the time, people didn't really know what to think. This was a massive loan, and Paper Games was not making anywhere near close that money. What people didn't know, though, was that the plan was simple. Internally, they were hoping to repay this loan by releasing Love and Deepspace. They were banking everything on the success of that game, and it was about to come out on January 2024. However, even with so much riding on this game's success, no one, whether it be from the staff or the executive team or the CEO himself, could have ever predicted the ridiculous success that this game would find all across the globe. This game's impact on the otome game genre was like what Genshin Impact did for gacha games. In 2024, Paper Games made over $1 billion, and you bet your ass that they repaid Hoyoverse every single dollar of that loan amount. It had done what so many others had attempted to do but failed, bringing this genre to the mainstream and incorporating gacha mechanics within it too. But why? What was the secret formula that no one else understood? Well, for many men, the attraction to gacha games was about having a power fantasy, collecting sexy and strong characters that will progress through a story that centers around them. Thing is though, women don't really want that. Love and Deepspace offered them something different. A game centered around being individually known and cared for. It played more like a 3D dating simulator that caters to your needs. Like a genuine routine that becomes a part of your day rather than just a traditional gacha game. And here's how it would do that. The game would initially release with 3 different love interests, Zane, Raphael, and Xavier, and Silas would release right after, with Caleb joining the rest of the cast in 2025. There would be a million different ways of being able to interact with them in-game, making them truly feel like, well, they're real. While you're in-game, they would call you through a video call, you'd be able to text them, and sometimes, this is a Silas thing, but he would call you his kitten. When it would be your birthday, they would all individually take the time to celebrate it and would sing you happy birthday or do some other things for you. And of course, you could go on dates with
Oh, my birthday's coming up. Where's my happy birthday from Silas and Xavier and did they say one of the characters was named Jeffrey? I can't remember.
them, spending quality time while able to do a variety of different activities together.
Where's my happy
But I
birthday?
feel like what would really take it to the next level was how developers would keep adding features that made this game a part of your daily routine. Other gachas asked you to log in every day to get rewards, but here, you are being asked to log in to make your life easier. Like for example, look at this feature called Remind Me, where you'd get a notification on your phone from your favorite love interest, reminding you of something important to you, like, I don't know, someone's birthday, or the fact that you have an important meeting coming up. And there'd be this
That's really interesting. So they kind of took the whole gotcha romance dating sim and then turned it into like kind of like, oh, this is also like reminding you to like take care of your like clean your room or take your meds or take your cat out for a walk and stuff. That's really interesting because I don't think many games do that. Like I don't even think many games remind you of when like Genshin for example, I don't think it reminds you when your resin's capped. Sure as hell is not gonna remind you to like say happy birthday to your best friend.
This other feature that would come out as well that you might have heard of called the period tracker. Now look, there are a lot of period tracker apps out there for women to keep track of their periods. But Love and Deepspace was
The period tracker? Definitely, this game is definitely targeted towards women, 100%. Um, that's interesting though. I don't know how I feel about the period tracker. Don't know how I feel about that, but who knows? Maybe it was beneficial for somebody. I really hope that there wasn't anything in game if you were like ovulating or something, because that'd be kind of concerning. I hope it's literally just a period tracker
like,
and
you
you
know
don't
what,
want to be
dude?
added.
This game is a part of your daily routine, so might as well have that feature too. So when you would get close to your period or your first day of your period would arrive, you'd have your favorite love interest point that out and vow to take care of you while giving you extra attention while you deal with cramps from the seventh circle of hell. Now, interestingly enough, this whole period tracker thing was some sort of a Twitter controversy when it came out back in early 2025. Some people would call Love and Deepspace a gooner game for having a period tracker, but that's just Twitter being Twitter. Because if you're going to call this a gooner game, might as well talk about the scenes where you're being figuratively railed. That's right, let's talk about monetization. How was this a gacha game? Well, you weren't pulling for the characters. You'd be pulling
At least it's not hiding the fact that it's a gooner game.
for something called memories. You'd meet the characters through the main story, so in other words, they'd be available to you for free. But memories are these special 3D cutscenes where you interact with these different love interests and, well, end up doing a lot of raunchy things. Yes, these can get really spicy. And it really caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting this level of raunchiness when I streamed this game for the shits and giggles back in 2024 with the streamer Box2.
Wait, am I giving him a lap dance? What's going on right now?
Oh my god!
Dude, what is this? We
He's
just get a free
sweating!
snack.
Bro, goddamn!
No, literally, you know, it appears to somebody, it appeals to somebody, so. Sorry, I'm just promoting my stream. Yippee. Um, you know, somebody out there likes the spiciness of it, and we're not gonna judge because, you know, there's worse things people could be doing. You know, somebody could be murdering somebody else. There's worse things the universe could be doing than liking.
What's happening?
Is that my tits?
Hey, yo, is that your leg? Oh, that's your leg. That's your leg. Hey, man.
Okay, okay.
Holy, my was sweating and hey, hey, hey!
Oh, man, he's bending me over!
Open your legs, bro! Yeah, it was definitely unexpected on my end. So essentially, this is what people spend their money on, okay? Of course, seeing that this is a free-to-play game, you can earn this currency for free by playing, but many would choose to spend money because other than these raunchy cutscenes, you'd also be unlocking outfits for these love interests as well as
That's why, okay, I deadass thought that the whole thing with the gacha was that you would get these memories and you get to view them like once. And then that's it. That's all you spend your money on in the gacha system. No, you unlock outfits for them too. Okay, that makes it a lot better.
gear that would make you more powerful for story combat sequences because this is an action game at the end of the day as well. All these elements combined would make this game one of the most successful gacha games of all time. Other developers in the industry would be so impressed that they would ask team members from Paper Games to conduct workshops or presentations talking about the logic and strategy behind making this behemoth. Like this presentation that was conducted back in March 2026 in the Game Developers Conference. It will be called Designing Crush-Worthy Characters in Love and Deepspace. This would be fascinating because in this presentation, the lead character designer would describe how the team designed characters that millions of players became emotionally attached to. This emotional attachment would be why this game would make so much money. The women playing this game would sometimes spend money when they already had a good enough amount of currency. And they had two main reasons to do so. Number one, they are absolutely in love with a love interest in the game and they want to spoil them. And number two, they want to support the developer. This is not a mentality that you see for many things. Many women genuinely wanted Paper Games to make more money so that they can continue updating the game because no one else had ever made a game like this. And before you knew it, this game was competing head-to-head with the giants of gacha such as Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. By mid-2024, it was making tens of millions of dollars per month.
The game released in 2023, right? And it's already making billions of dollars in its first year. That's crazy. That's really crazy. Oh my god. It released in 2023 and was making that much money. It literally is like ranked in here. It's ranked top, like literally ranking higher than Genshin. That's crazy. Especially because of how popular Genshin was, or kind of still is. That's actually insane that it was making that much money. Like within its first year of release, especially because Genshin made what I think $1 billion in the first 174 days of its release on mobile, breaking the world record held by Pokemon Go. And then it was making, and then Love and Deepspace was making this much money. That's actually
So, as I said, it was no wonder that paper games made over $1 billion in 2024, while also becoming the #1 highest earning app on the Chinese App Store, which is a very big deal. But by the end of 2024, they would take it another step further.
isn't Hoyoverse a Chinese company? Hoyoverse is a Chinese company, isn't it? And freaking Love and Deepspace was reached the what was it? Number one most played game or whatever, or #1 most revenue game.
#1 highest earning app on the Chinese App Store, which
Yeah, #1 highest earning app in the Chinese App Store. I'm 99% sure Genshin is a Chinese game because it's owned by Hoyoverse, which is a Chinese company. That's freaking crazy that it's competing with like Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, Honkai Impact, all these sorts of things. And it still became the #1 most played game or most downloaded game or highest earning game.
is a very big deal. But by the end of 2024, they would take it another step further, incorporating something that's not really present in mainstream gacha games like Love and Deepspace: VIP services. You would become a VIP if you spend a minimum of $690. And as
What? It was promoted. It it was this is literally like the equivalent of like Sephora when you have when you're like a beauty insider. You like spend money to become a beauty insider, and the more money you spend, the higher VIP you are. That's crazy. That's crazy that the game has that. But also, I feel like that's what the future is going to become. Is people are going to stop spending money in real life and start spending money online and in video games and stuff like that. And a lot of like online companies are going to start having these types of things for spending money. So I'm not surprised that a video game would have something like this, but
soon as you reach Tier 2, which starts at $2,100, you would receive gift boxes sent to your address. They'd have special merch and other little goodies. And when you get to the VIP 2 tier, you start getting personalized gift boxes sent to your address, with more exclusive items signed by your love interest.
sign me up. I will spend all the money I possibly can to get personalized stuff sent to me by my love interests. I don't play Love in Deepspace, but if I did, I'd be spending an absurd amount of money just so that I could get personalized stuff sent to my door.
In game once you reach higher tiers, with some being at a minimum of 5 fucking figures. Look at how many people on the Love and Deepspace subreddit would post when they got VIP, like it's a celebration. And you know what's even crazier? These prices that I just showed you are exclusive to the Chinese server, taking into consideration their local purchasing power. But
Damn, just in the Chinese server. Imagine how much money they'd make if they did this globally. From like having the VIP thing
outside
going
of the
on.
Chinese, Japanese, and South Korean servers, it has been reported, like in this thread right here, that the minimum for global players to become VIP is to spend around $6,000. Almost 10 times the Chinese minimum. That is a lot of money. By March 2025, Love and Deepspace would start outgrossing Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, while the
What? It's crazy to me though that the most at this point, March 2025, or sorry, February 2025 to March 2025, the most bought like the most money spent in a video game is Pokemon TCG Pocket. That's crazy to me. I think that the game had just come out though at that point, so makes sense. A lot of people are trying to like master set cards or master set decks in that game, so
Waves, Uma Musume, I mean, just about any other gacha. The CEO of Paper Games was hailed as a genius, and he would become a billionaire. He'd be interviewed by so many different publications, and he'd say that the reason for his success was simple, specifying it's not that women don't like to play games, but there are no good games for women to play. He'd also point out,
I mean, I play Genshin. I think that that's a pretty good game, but I play Apex as well. Not as good of a game. Just putting it out there. But I do think it's very interesting that that's the take that the guy has that's creating an Otome game. That there's no good games for women. I think that that's interesting. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but
that when it came to Paper Games, 70% of their workforce is female. So he wasn't necessarily the genius here, it was the team behind this game. For one of the first times,
of course it's good if of course he's not like okay. Obviously he came up with the concept of the game, but having a team of women making a game for women is obviously going to result in the women like in women being attracted to this game because the women that are working on the game know what other women want. So I think that that's actually really cool and really like honestly a good idea to have women work on a game for women.
ever you had a high budget game for women made by women in the otome genre. And that's what so many other game companies were missing. That's why games like Tears of Themis just couldn't really hit the mark. And this is how Love and Deepspace became a worldwide phenomenon, with billboards even popping up in Times Square. I mean, it would become such a phenomenon that you'd have media publications like Reuters making mini documentaries about how this game took over women's love lives. Listen to how they would describe it.
Chinese civil servant Zhou is in a 6-month relationship with her first boyfriend. He's a wavy-haired, handsome painter. He's also fictional. Qi Yu is
He's also fictional, that voice. Hey, at least she has a boyfriend now, you know? She doesn't feel lonely. So, love that for her.
one of 5 romantic interests to choose from in Love and Deepspace, the world's biggest mobile dating game with some 80 million users, according to research firm Sensor Tower.
80 million users. That is an insane amount of users. But yeah, this app did such a good job of incorporating itself into your daily routine that it kind of made it meaningless for many women to even seek out a boyfriend. It was that crazy. There'd also be a couple different documentaries by the publication South China Morning Post. In one of them, they talk about women that would specifically hire cosplayers to dress up as their love interest from Love and Deepspace and go out on dates with them. And in another,
So many people do this, and honestly, like, I would love it if if my parents or like a friend hired for my birthday, for example, a cosplayer who looked like one of my like waifus in a video game or one of my husbandos in a video game. That sounded really cringe to say out loud. And like they came to my birthday party dressed up as that character. I would be shocked and I'd be happy about that. Or even like the interpretation of like one of the characters in one of the books that I like. That'd be really freaking cool, you know? Having a character that you like being at an event for you. That's really cool. Even just like having friends dress up in cosplay at your birthday, if you're allowing that, of course. If you don't allow that, then like don't let your friends do that. If your friends do that, don't accept it. But like if you're into that and would love like your friends to cosplay, I think that's a really cool idea to like cosplay at your birthday. Like you join them and stuff like that. That's really cool. I think it's really cool to have people cosplay at events and stuff.
they would do the same thing as Reuters. Talk about how some women were replacing real-life men with, well, Love and Deepspace love interests. Such massive success comes with its own fair share of critics, and by 2025 you'd have multiple media publications come up with a narrative that it's because of games like this, these otome games, that birth rates were declining. A lot of criticism would be directed towards the game and the women that were playing it. Some of these women would start blaming incel culture for this, while others would point out that it's just simply because it's popular. This new dynamic
Okay. This is actually what sparked me to want to react to this video, because here's my thing. Is we're blaming women who like these characters in video games for the lack of birth rates and all that sort of stuff. When in reality, it's not just the women that are doing this, because there's the whole other concept that sparked the Love and Deepspace game from existing, which is literally that a lot of games are made for men to appeal to the man's gaze and are supposed to like appeal to their love life or their love interests. So why are we blaming women when the issue isn't just women, it's also men who are also experiencing the would the experience of would rather be with a fictional character than with a real life person? Like, this just sounds like we're blaming the male loneliness epidemic on uh yeah, sorry, like why are we blaming women when it goes both ways? It's not just women, it's also men. We can't just blame women for this sort of stuff. I think the whole incel debate kind of sums it up, because it's literally just like, oh, I can't get with women, so women are the problem. Like, that's not
Would lead to some nasty fights within the gacha community. Like how, for example, on the Chinese internet, some Love and Deepspace fans would go head to head with Snowbreak Containment Zone fans, a game that heavily targeted the male demographic. Things got very nasty there, and I would need to make a whole video to do it justice, but it did end with the government intervening and pretty much censoring the hell out of Snowbreak. But it's just an example to illustrate to you how this huge wave of attention that this game got didn't only bring positives to the community. However, as long as the developer could keep the Love and Deepspace community satisfied, nothing could stand in the way of this money-printing behemoth. But with so much attention and expectations aimed towards this game, and with so much money being made, as time went on, it seemed like Paper Games was simply not prepared to blow up that much. And that lack of preparation gave them many more problems with their own community than they could have ever bargained for.
really, I thought the whole thing that was that Love and Deep, like the paper, whatever it's called, paper games, created Love and Deepspace in hopes to repay their debt to Hoyoverse. I think they were expecting it to blow up. I just don't think they were expecting it to blow up to that degree.
So remember how I said that this game was all about how it made its own audience feel like they're being individually known and cared for? Well, it wasn't just the game doing this. It was the developer, too. Here are some examples. Throughout the year, there will be multiple time-limited events in the game, like other gacha games. And whenever that would happen, they would take the opportunity to make these educational videos directed towards their female audience that taught them different things that they could find useful, well, as women. Here's them, for example, hiring the Beijing 2008 Olympic champion for judo. And in this 12-minute video, women who play this game would be taught about women's self-defense. Here's another example in which a faculty member at the Mental Health Education Center of the China Academy of Art would conduct a workshop about mental health. But this wouldn't just be limited to a woman's needs. Paper Games, being a Chinese developer, would also take this as an opportunity to teach their massive global audience about Chinese culture. Like how in this video, the director of Heritage Protection Division would teach the Love and Deepspace audience about
It's a really good idea to use your coverage um, to discuss things like this. I think that's a really good idea.
China's cultural heritage. Them using the game's revenue to fund things like this made many women express the fact that this wasn't just a community or a developer, this was a safe space specifically for women. You can see this expressed in so many of these different comments. I'm not really making it up. There are people saying that they were literally crying watching the self-defense video. This comment right here I think sums it up, saying, "It's crazy and also super amazing how a dating simulator is inspiring me and others to take care of ourselves, recognize our self-worth, and even learn self-defense." This is what Love and Deepspace was for so many people. But unfortunately, as time went on, this priceless relationship built on trust would start having cracks form in its foundation due to bad decisions made by the developer, mostly relating to the game itself. What do I mean by this? Well, let's go back to the example of Genshin Impact. It makes a lot of money, and in return, it's meant to give you constant updates. one update typically lasts for 40 days. Then the next update comes along with new events and, more importantly, new story, advancing the plot that everyone's playing the game for. Every update would also typically have 2 brand new characters that you can pull for. And every year, you'd have a major update that would introduce an entirely new region. Now, as I mentioned before, Love and Deepspace does have a story mode. You'd have story segments that are in 3D, it's like a 3D visual novel, right, with cutscenes and voice acting, and you'd also have combat. This is easily, by far, the most important aspect of the game. Story is what allows you to meet the new love interests at release, while also advancing the plot with them in it. Because they interact with each other as well, they have stories that tie in together and they know each other, sometimes being friends. So while yes, many players get very excited about pulling for a banner because it involves a raunchy cutscene, if you had to ask them whether they prefer getting a banner of their favorite love interest or more story, the majority of them would always choose more story. But by 2025, it seemed evident that both banners and story content were just not meeting expectations. They weren't necessarily releasing fast enough for a game.
Is my mic working? Okay, there it is. I was a little worried that my mic wasn't working.
Game of this caliber making this much money, and multiple complaints will start arising within the community that the scheduling is too inconsistent and the communication is just non-existent. Genshin
Yeah, the thing with gacha games is you really do need to have that, like, consistency with your, like, story release and all that sort of stuff. If you don't have that, you're gonna lose your player base pretty quickly. Not quickly if you're like a popular content, like not content, not pop, not quickly if you're like a popular game, but you'll see more of a decrease in players more than if you don't update your game and give story. You'll see a decrease of players more than if it was a game that was frequently updating their story. I think that for a good example is Genshin back in like 2023 around Sumerio's release. It kind of like dropped content wise. It didn't really have much going on for events and stuff, and the events that were happening were kind of rerun events that were just changed a little bit. It was that sort of stuff. That the game drastically decreased in popularity during that period of time because the updates were just too far between, and the games that they were releasing, the events that they were releasing, weren't as interesting as some of their other events. I think another really great example of this is Apex. These are like the only 2 games I play, but Apex doesn't have much content really ever, and one of the biggest critiques that it had like a year ago was that it would just re-release skins but change the color of them, and even then still re-release skins. At this point the game re-releases collection events like 3 at a time and then has like 2 new collection events. It's very much like it's trying to grab your money but not really focus on the players and stuff, and like not want to focus on like actually making people stay. So the game is very dead nowadays compared to its glory when it was like first released in 2019. There's so many games that are like this where people just stop playing the game because there's not very much updates, and I think it's just you need to have updates in the game, and if Love and Deepspace isn't releasing updates, obviously people aren't going to stick around in the game, but I don't think that that's why the majority of people stop playing. But you know.
Impact had a new update every 40 days. That was well established. Other gachas functioned very similarly. It was simply the industry standard. But with Love and Deepspace, it seemed like they just released things on a whim, like as if they were winging it. When it came to limited banners, right, the ones that you had to pull for within a specific time frame, otherwise they disappear, there'd be mainly 2 types. A banner made specifically for one love interest, and a banner with all love interests combined. Now look, when it comes to combined banners, there's a lot of misinformation out there about how it works. I saw many, even Love and Deepspace players, saying that you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting the banner that you want. But that's not true. There's this mechanic that allows you to select the one banner that you really want and 2 others that you'd also not mind having. Once you hit a 5-star, you'll randomly get one of those banners. If you don't get your precise wish, the character that you wanted the most, then this mechanic guarantees that the next time you hit a 5-star, you will get the banner that you wanted the most. So regardless of how many
It's just a a 50-50, really. It's just a 50-50 with also allowing you the chance to have, like, two, where you can also pick other characters that you want. Like, I'd rather, if I'm gonna lose my 50-50, I'd rather lose it to Mizuki rather than Jean, kind of thing. It's basically just a 50-50 still.
Love interests get added to the game, whether it's 3 or 6, the odds will always remain the same. Now, I want to make something clear. Remember how I said that Genshin Impact released a major update every year which involved a new region? Well, the version of this in Love and Deepspace is a new love interest. A new love interest signifies a new region. It adds more story, more lore, more depth. I mean, it was just the best thing you could hope for. But by the time the 5th character came out, which was Caleb, a certain issue became very hard to ignore for the wider community. And that had to do with the fact that Paper Games now had a workload that they clearly couldn't handle anymore. More characters coming out with their limited.
How many love interests are too many for you? I personally think that more than 5 love interests will be too many. Might just try to get your favorite man when there are 6.
Resources meant that some characters.
Anything over 6, don't get me wrong. I love some of the other otomes, but 2 games I have more than 6, and it's exhausting. One has 12 and the other's 14. That's
Would be completely neglected in favor of.
You want to be able to, like, if you're not going to focus on one of your love interests, you still want to have, like, other ones that you can focus on. Having too many is going to make it, like, confusing. That makes sense. Not confusing, but, like, make it where you're, like, spreading yourself thin. If you, like, want to focus on lore and stuff like that, having a lot of characters makes it difficult because the memories and stuff like that you have to pull for, and oh, there you go. And if you have to, like, spend a bunch of money or spend a bunch of time to, like, get these memories for all, like, for 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, how many love interests, it's going to be difficult to keep up with the lore, so.
Your ones. And this leads us to my wonderful creation that I call the neglect ranking. I made this to really illustrate to you just how disorganized the release schedule of this game was, as if they were truly winging it. Now, as I said, the most important aspect of this game is story content, but for the sake of this argument, let's look at banners first. So as you can see, the most neglected love interest in this game is Xavier. His last banner was his birthday. This happens every year for every character, by the way. And it was 9 months ago. Meanwhile, Caleb was 4 weeks ago, and Silas was 7 weeks ago at the time of recording. Now, yes, you can make the argument that Silas and Caleb released after the initial 3, but is it really fair to neglect 3 of your 5 characters in favor of the 2 newer ones? What if you played this game just for Xavier or Raphael? This was very inconsistent and showed that there was no real release schedule that made it fair for everyone. But if you thought this was bad, then wait till you see the main story neglect ranking. Here, the most neglected is Caleb, the most recent character. The last time he was in the story was in January 2025, 18 months ago. His debut arc when he first released. When it came to Silas and Zane, 14 months ago. And when it came to the most favored characters, really in quotations most favored, Xavier and Raphael were in the main story 6 months ago. This meant that the last story content for this game was on January 2nd, 2026. We're now halfway through 2026.
That's crazy, because a lot of gacha games, even ones that aren't, like, popular, are releasing story, like, every month to 2 months. Releasing story over half a year ago is actually, like, and that's, like, January 2nd, 2026. That would have been, like, almost 8 months ago now. If they haven't, well, from my understanding, they did try to release more content, like story content, and it just didn't. I think it's interesting that their story content is the big thing that happens once a year. Like, that's insane.
And there was no new main story content, period. That's without mentioning the characters that haven't been featured in the story for way longer than 6 months. So in comparison to other gacha games of the same tier as Love and Deepspace that make as much money, this was ridiculous. They were inconsistent with their release schedule and were not communicative enough about things to look forward to, about dates. And let's also not forget the fact that they refused to make a PC client for this game, even though their other games had it. But this was the game that was making them the most money. And so, as I mentioned, this would be a recurring topic within the community starting as early as 2025. It would cause multiple dramas with different points of views giving their opinions on why it takes so long to develop the main story and release content. But overall, the biggest loss for this game were longtime players that had spent a lot of money on it, losing hope that anything was going to change. Feeling like the money and time they were spending in this game just didn't matter, like this money was being funneled to other projects, and Paper Games was simply not interested in making it any better. This would start forming a narrative that they were too greedy, prioritizing memories and banners and ignoring.
I feel like Infold has gotten lazy when it comes to their story mode. In the earlier chapters, that's it from a year ago. In the earlier chapters that were available when the game first came out, there were cutscenes almost every other section. At first, I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't see many others saying anything, and I assumed that Infold should be given more slack. But with every banner coming out and more things only being available to pay to play players, I've become frustrated. I'm not shy to spending money on this game, so that's not where this is coming from. I'm just thinking that the company is making millions off its users, but can't seem to make the story mode as visual as before. If anything, focusing on the story mode should be a higher priority than bumping out banners back to back for over a year now. I feel like maybe I'm just a spoiled user, so that's why I've come here, so maybe someone can talk sense into me. I understand that the cutscenes take time and resources, but it's not like Infold is losing money over it. So far, main story updates are approximately once every 6 months. That's crazy. Once every 6 months? You're waiting half a year every time you want a new story update that I assume probably takes like 2 hours max to get through. Them adding one or two extra cutscenes won't put them into bankruptcy, and if anything, it'll bring more attention to the game. I do feel like they're focusing their attention on the wrong things. Sure, the banners are fun. Uh, sure, the banners are fun, but they're not going to hold up in the long run, at least not compared to the main story. That's true. It's true. Um, Especially since it seems like the majority of the people who play this game, on top of it being for the like being an otome game, it does feel like a lot of people play it for the story. So obviously, um like the story coming out once every 6 months, and at this point not having cutscenes, which seems to be something that people don't like, that would definitely be very upsetting to players, especially people who've been playing the game since launch. That would seem very upsetting. Like, it sucks to see a game decline in its quality, or at least in the effort that's being put into it, especially games like this. Um, it's like not having cutscenes. I love video games with cutscenes. They always give me goosebumps when they're like fully animated ones. I love them. It sucks like knowing that there are people out there who also enjoy cutscenes and aren't getting them in these games that they like. That does suck.
The story. It seemed like they simply didn't really have what it took to be this big of a developer with so much success. They just weren't ready for it. As evidenced by the fact that things would get significantly worse because they would somehow commit an unforgivable taboo in their own local market of China. A mistake so grave that it perfectly encapsulates the expression of shooting yourself in the foot. 9/11 is a
I'm sorry. What? Where did this come from? 9/11. Why are we talking about this? What?
tragic event that would occur on United States soil on the 11th of September 2001. It's best known for the two passenger planes that were hijacked full of passengers that collided into the two towers of the World Trade Center. There would, of course, be two other planes involved, one that would crash into the Pentagon and one that tried to crash into the White House but failed. Now, this was an event that happened over 25 years ago, and odds are, if I went to the US right now and made a joke centered around 9/11, everyone would find it funny.
It didn't happen over 25 years ago. It happened 25 years ago in September.
Assuming I have good humor, except for those who were directly involved in those events, losing a family member, a relative, or a friend. Hell, I could probably make
Yeah, no, 9/11 was awful. My mom, she was in high school when 9/11 happened, and she told me that she remembers like she was in class and they wheeled in a TV to put on the news while the planes were crashing into the buildings and while that sort of stuff was happening. It was really scary, and she actually, we live in Canada, but she helped to create and like run a fundraiser at her high school to um get money to help with like 9/11 survivors and help funding and like give them something to help them. So I thought that that was really nice. I obviously wasn't alive during 9/11 because I was born in 2007. But regardless, I think it's very tragic what happened, and I think that a lot of people suffered, and I'm very sorry to the people who lost their lives or relatives or family members or loved ones to 9/11. It's a really shitty situation.
Make a joke about Pearl Harbor, a tragic event that occurred during World War II. And again, the majority would probably not care. That's just how culture works in the United States when it comes to sensitive events. Nothing holds weight there for too long. Now, on the other hand, when it comes to East and Southeast Asia, actually, you know what, probably the majority of Asia at this point, but let's just focus on East Asia for now. Tragic events, no matter when they happen throughout history, still hold immense weight even today. Their dates, their anniversaries, their names, they are ingrained into society, and no one would ever dare joke about them. This cultural clash can be perfectly illustrated during the meeting between President Trump of the United States and Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi of Japan. Trump would make a Pearl Harbor joke right to the Prime Minister's face and laugh it off. This is something perfectly acceptable.
Oops, what did I just do? Uh, look at her face. She is so not impressed. You can't see it because my face is covering, but she does not look happy at all.
In the United States. This is passable. Takaichi, on the other hand, I mean, you can see the facial expression on her. She was mortified. If she would have made a Pearl Harbor joke, or hell, I don't know, a Hiroshima or Nagasaki joke in Japan, she'd get impeached within less than 24 hours. That's just how the
100%, 100%. That's
culture
exactly
works
right.
there. And so, this is why it was extremely clumsy and stupid and tone deaf for Paper Games, a Chinese developer, to release a lore chapter on April 2026 about the character Xavier, where they talk about human experimentation and other dark themes, while titling it Test Record A0731. Like, even
I have no idea what this means. Let's actually search that up. What was it? A0731. Oh, that is awful. Um, yeah, that makes sense why people weren't happy about that.
if I hired someone to sabotage this company from within, they wouldn't come up with such a genius idea. When you say the three numbers 731 to any Chinese person who was educated in a state school, for example, they'll immediately think of one thing: Unit 731 of the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. This was a secret research facility that was operated between 1933 and 1945 on occupied Chinese territory, more specifically in Harbin. This is where the Japanese would experiment on over 200,000 human beings for
200,000? That's crazy.
from China. They would say it's to advance medicine, but in reality,
Some prisoners would be from Russia or Korea.
many of these experiments were just morbid and sadistic. I'm not going to go into full detail because I'll get demonetized and age restricted, but you can read about this yourself. I can give you an example though. They'd have pregnant women in captivity in Unit 731, and those
What? Really? That's so crazy actually. Oh my god.
those babies would be born in captivity as well. Those incredible scientists would come up with the idea to experiment on those babies, but not like any experiments. It would just be like, hey, I'm bored. Why don't we throw like a few babies in this frozen river outside and see how long it takes for them to die?
What the fuck? I had no idea that this has happened before. That is really concerning, and no company should ever be
Yeah,
making
I wish I was
stuff.
I wish I was making things up, bro. This was Unit 731. This is well known in Asia, specifically in China, because of how horrendous it was. But it's not really
Yeah, no shit, that's gonna be horrendous. 200,000 Chinese people and Russian and Koreans were fucking experimented on just for gits and shiggles, from what I'm understanding. Just because they could.
taught to Westerners. It's not taught in schools. In China, though, to this day, even in 2026, you say 731 to anyone, they'll know what you're talking about. There's a reason, many different reasons, that Chinese still hold Japanese people in very negative regard, even.
You know what? Yeah, I was actually really curious because I've seen a lot of stuff online about, well, not online, but like there's some stuff that's been popping up on my like YouTube and stuff like that relating to history and like mentions like Chinese and Japanese people not getting along, and I was always really curious about that and why that was a thing. I understand now. That makes perfect sense why they would not be happy with each other.
In 2026. This is without me mentioning the rape of Nanjing, for example. And so, as a Chinese company, to have a lore text about human experimentation with the number 731 is just, it's insane. It's genuinely insane. But when it first came out in April 2026, it didn't really bring much controversy. In fact, most people didn't even know about it or didn't really care. The reason why I'm telling you about this right now is because this is going to bite them in the ass very badly later. For now, though, the Love and Deepspace community was laser focused on one thing and one thing only. When is my story content going to come out already? But here's the thing, ever since the game released with 3 characters, there's always been a coming soon text on the bottom right, indicating that there's going to be more love interests to come out. And so when Silas and Caleb released, their updates were so major because they came with more story content, with banners, with all sorts of things. And so many were wondering when this 6th character was finally going to come out because this meant more story finally after a 6-month drought. Well, around the end of June 2026, the Love and Deepspace community would finally get an answer to this. And while this was meant to be a period of immense joy and excitement, it ended up turning into the biggest existential threat that this game and studio have ever faced since opening their doors in 2012. Alright, so it's now June 22nd.
Dear Lincoln citizens, we have an important celestial announcement. Lincoln City is about to witness a once-in-a-century supermoon. With exactly 1 week to go until the full moon, Lincoln's astronomy and weather forecast live streams invites you to join our moon-chasing journey tonight, June 22nd at 1900 UTC plus 8, in the official Love and Deepspace live stream. Let's begin the countdown to the supermoon, follow the moon's changing phases together, and welcome a once-in-a-century supermoon. Lincoln's astronomy and weather forecast live stream 6.22.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Love and Deepspace players receive an in-game message telling them that they're about to witness a once-in-a-century supermoon, asking them to go.
Is my I just came to the realization that the stream is echoing and my mic is really, really quiet. Well, that's lovely. Okay, let's fix that. Oh, capture audio. Oh, where did the thing go? Where did my stream go? I need to have that? No. this is, I don't, no, I also need to turn up my microphone. How loud is that?
Watch a live stream that was going to take place on the
Okay, hopefully this is fixing all problems. Let's test this. Okay, I think this should fix it. Uh, I am so sorry for the people. I don't know how friggity rackety I did that. Okay, so hopefully now the stream should work properly. YouTube capture mic. Why is the mic like that? I don't want the mic to be like that. Oh, interesting. Okay. Weird that the YouTube and the mic are connected. Oh, they're all connected. That's weird. Why is it like that? Okay. Hopefully this has fixed all problems. I'm gonna try with this.
the same day. This really came out of nowhere.
I am so sorry for the people. I don't know how correctly I did that. Okay. Hopefully now the stream should work. I'm trying to like get the latency because I don't like the latency. How do I change the latency on here? Interesting. Oh. How did I do this? How did I manage to fuck this up so badly for a fucking hour? It was an entire hour that I was like having my thing. Hi, can you watch my edit? What? Sure, I can watch your edit. Uh, let me see. DMC edit. Which one? The freaking leg is crazy. Do you like make basketball edits?
The Knicks did not just win for New York City. They won like New York City.
I like that one. That Spider-Man one is pretty good. Watch the Sega? Okay. This one? The Sega LeBron James one? I'm gonna assume it's this one.
The Knicks did not just win for New York City. The Knicks did not just win for New York City.
What is happening to my YouTube? I really like this Spider-Man one. Oh. The dancing edit is also fire.
Can't you see you're hurting you are for me? Oh, we were meant to be dancing in the moonlight, gazing at the stars so bright, holding you until the sun.
Honestly, it's pretty cool. I think you should keep up with this because I think that you're really good at this. I think that it's That's okay. I'm also a small creator. Also, sorry for the like insane uh latency. I am trying to fix that. The latency is freaking crazy. I think I can only fix it if I end stream, which sucks. But oh, thank you for the sub. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Sorry for the latency. I like am seeing your messages on here, but like the stream is taking forever to show them. So have a nice day. It's 6:40 here. I probably should eat dinner at some point. All right, back.
And it shows you that they're kind of winging it with their scheduling. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Something like this would typically get like
Yeah, I'll probably make dinner after I'm done with stream. We still got uh like less than an hour of this video, and then I'll probably end stream. So
a week's notice. In any case, the supermoon countdown would take hold. People waited with bated breath to see what this announcement was going to be, and then all of a sudden, it was
thank you. That's very sweet of you. I would love to be a like famous streamer. That's the goal. The goal is to be a famous streamer. But okay, bye. Have a great night.
right there. A new character would be announced, Valko,
Thank you for the
half
sub.
wolf, half human. And as you can see by the chat on the global live stream that has almost 1 million views, the community was extremely excited. All of them spamming ow like a wolf, unable to wait to see him in action, both in combat but also the
Thank you so much for the engagement. I really appreciate that. Um, enjoy watching my vids. I don't know how much my vids will entertain you. I mostly stream, so I don't have very many videos. um,
story, because a new character, as I said, signified a new region, so this was huge. However, in another live stream they would do shortly after, they would announce something else. Another major feature, which was the Home 2.0 update. You'd have a home that you can
okay. Okay, have a great night. Bye-bye. This update that seems to be being like severely broadcasted in Love and Deepspace for the controversy that happens is like actually insane to me because it seems like this update's going to be actually really good.
hang out with your love interests, and this time around, they were adding a kitchen where you can cook together with them and take pictures, etc. However, in the announcement trailer, they would use this sentence saying, "Never bathe in the pot." This was very, very tone deaf, just like with the whole 731 business, because the Chinese viewers, they felt that it was in reference to what had happened back in the year of 2024, where a man in Shanxi made the soul of his girlfriend evaporate to heaven by pouring extremely hot noodle broth on her using a pot. So due to this, the phrase bathing in a pot had become dark lingo online referencing this specific case. For example, you could tell someone, hey, go bathe in a pot, and people would understand you weren't wishing them well.
The hell? That's actually crazy. Oh my god. Why would somebody say that? Why would a
So already this was
company
causing a lot
that's
of
like
controversy, even though
why would a company that's based in China say that sort of shit? That's crazy. That's absolutely like
a
so
new love
crazy.
interest was just announced and it was meant to be something very exciting. At the same time, in Valko's trailer, they would also use yet another controversial sentence while teasing him, saying, invite the wolf in the Chinese.
The hunter is alone at home must the hunter that is alone at home must be very careful. Compared to the Ian version, the wording in Siad here has a more warning tone, which got interpreted as PSA for women living alone, potentially being more prone to danger. The better watch out, and Ian carries more of a playful mock menace. Sian, an uninvited wolf's sudden surprise ambush in the moonlit night, wordplay on blank uninvited guest. The CN, I don't know why I said blank. I can't read that. The CN version suggests that the wolf showed up without invitation as an attack, whereas EN, it shows a much calmer wording without any signs of sadness or aggression. CN climbed through the window, entered the room. CN tone is flatter, as if describing a break-in scene in crime reports, and here adds more emotional coloring with the invasion being in the heart.
Live stream, they had used a Chinese idiom, meaning to invite disaster by letting an enemy inside your home. Seeing that his character concept involves him breaking into the female protagonist's home, that didn't help. What also didn't help was that his dialogue included, what's wrong with inviting the wolf in, just peek inside and she'll open her door for you. So, combining this with the whole bathe in the pot controversy, some Chinese players felt that Love and Deepspace was packaging illegal home invasion as a romantic fantasy.
Yeah, I need you to let me crash at your place for the night. You want to silence any witnesses. Read here in context. You want to kill me. Isn't it a little late for that? What? Compared to EN, the CN text is phrased as uh more as a demand, whereas EN is a request more than open to rejection. Home Alone Hunter, better watch out. A wolf under the moon. Window entry, heart invasion. Take me in for the night, trying to muzzle me. Same goes with the latter wording of permanently silencing versus muzzling context. Prior to the let the wolf in line, Valko does ask MC if she can let him stay over for one night, while the trailer shows that he's been injured. Cian, I will let the whole forest know that you are my food reserve. Oh. Um, now the whole forest knows you're my emergency ration. The CN phrasing is more domineering here, as it's phrased as an action, whereas EN is passive happenstance. Uh, CN, what's so bad about letting the wolf into your home? And what's so bad about wolves being at the door? In the CN, it suggests that the wolf is going inside the house, whereas in EN, he's presented as just something outside. The door still serves as a sort of last layer of defense, while CN it's read as an invasion of privacy. CN, just peek inside and he'll open the door for you. The original CN is phrased as a conditional, whereas the peek is the requirement for the door being opened. EN here suggests that suggests that it takes only a little convincing for him to open the door. One peek is enough for him to open the door for you. Interesting.
Using language that explicitly frames a woman's private space as available to enter without consent. So this, on top of the whole bathe in the pot thing, went against the idea of this being a safe space for women, and it caused a lot of controversy as well.
Seems weird.
And if that wasn't enough, the Valco trailer that was posted on Chinese social media would get bombarded with over
What's the volume for the video so loud? What the fuck? Why is my mic volume so low, but the volume for the video is so loud? No matter how little I turn it down, what the fuck? Mic. Do 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 da 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 da. How do I properties? I think that there's a way for me to turn off the mics for certain things because I feel like capture audio only. Can I change? Use custom audio device. Okay, there. Da 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 da. If I do that, okay. Webcam. Ba 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 ba. Mic. Okay, does that fix the problem? Testing 1 2 1 2.
700
Turn up the mic now. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do. Bop. Bop bop bop. Bop 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 bop. Turn up mic. Oop. Forgot to mute that. And then turn down the video. There we go. That should have fixed it, I think.
50,000 comments, many of them very negative,
Ba, ba,
because
ba,
many players
ba,
would express the fact that not only did they not feel safe around him because he'll break into your home or whatever, but they heavily disliked the way he looked, calling it too much of a Western look, saying things like, can it be released on the international server separately? And telling the developer either go offline or make it look better.
Okay. Well, my mic is still very quiet, and now the fucking video is really quiet too. I am not good at this, guys. Boom. Mic all the way up. Video. I could just adjust the video on here. Okay. There.
Referring to Valco. Here's this comment, for example, getting 300 likes. No obligation to support the new Western main lead, refund, and shut down the server. With many also expressing the same thing by saying, just please release it on the global servers and leave the Chinese server alone, I'm begging you. At the same time, very toxic elements of the Chinese community would sprout out and would start insulting Western players, calling them Western white whores while also telling Paper Games, hey, you fucking forgotten who your main donor is. You've forgotten who makes you the most money, us, the Chinese players. There will be some very nasty comments all around made towards Westerners because of Valco being teased. But it wouldn't just be his Western look that would turn them off. It goes back to what I was talking about the community grievances that had started spawning in 2025. The whole idea about the inconsistent release schedule, how some characters were getting main story releases and some others weren't, and for some reason there'd be complaints about the fact that the gacha odds are now worse with a 6th character. Instead of having a 1 in 5 chance of getting the banner you want, you have a 1 in 6 chance. I really have no idea why this became a thing because I explained in this video how the banner system works. I guess we can call these people LARPers. And on top of that, there will be complaints about inconsistent story narratives, saying that Valko is a core leader of a villainous group in the story that has harmed all existing protagonists. So in a way, some didn't want a romantic interest that hurt the other romantic interests. But
Didn't want a romantic interest that's hurt other romantic interests, which makes sense because looking at video games such as like Genshin, for example, there's a lot of, like, they don't want to add irredeemable characters like Dottore and stuff. So I think this makes sense because the fan base and stuff doesn't want to have like irredeemable characters. Most of the time, gotcha games are doing things for their fan base, not for their, like, okay, theoretically they're doing things for their fan base, like, but it's for the sake of them making money. So if it's an irredeemable character, they're not going to make money off of that in the grand scheme of things. So
honestly,
makes
this was
sense.
surprising to me that this was even a narrative because even in his own trailer, it's explained that Valko is the Eon Core Tech chairman, not having anything to do with Ever. So this was yet another rumor that spawned on the
I
Chinese
have
internet
no
that for
idea what
some
any of
reason
this stuff
spread like
means.
wildfire. Are you starting to understand why this whole topic is so convoluted? Like, I'm genuinely so confused half the time. And on top of that, for some reason, I guess maybe it's a cultural thing, many Chinese female players feel like a wolf or a bear character is gay. So there were many complaints that Valkyrie
Curious about that. Why do they think that? Why does wolf or bear character appear gay? Da, da, da. Let's talk dirty to the animals is crazy. Okay, so I think it's just because wolf and bear are terms to describe somebody who is gay and um who is gay and like a bear is like a gay guy who's like big and buff and burly and like hairy, and a wolf, it describes somebody who's like big and like somewhat hairy and gay. So I can understand why why the community of people playing Love and Deepspace assume that a character that resembles a wolf or a bear would be considered gay, but I don't think that's the case in this regard.
was gay, actually. This was really something that you could find a lot on Chinese social media. And I guess the problem with having a gay character, in their opinion, was the fact that Love and Deepspace would attract gay male players. And they didn't want that. They only want this game to be directed towards women. Now, on this extremely ratioed post on Chinese social media, they would do their best to communicate with their player base, to calm any grievances they might have and tell them, hey, trust us. For example, this is them replying to someone that called Valko gay, saying, all the male protagonists are heterosexual, yesterday, today, tomorrow, and forever. And they would reply with things like, I'm sorry, after you've calmed down a bit from venting, could you please take a look at this wolf and give him a try? Please. Damage control was in full swing. But these replies would be posted on Chinese social media known as Xiaohongshu, and the comments weren't really impressed. They really just didn't like the character.
Ling Wang is quite handsome. Instead of apologies and focus on making the model look good, if you revise it further and make it look better, it will still have an audience. The reason is it's being ridiculed. Why is it like spaced like that? Ridiculed is mainly because the description of it as handsome is not
And they
objective.
didn't really like the direction the game was headed in. This was in massive contrast to the global audience, okay? Like, this is Valko's trailer that was released on Twitter, and it didn't just get 5 million views and a lot of likes. Many of the top comments, in fact, all of them, were very, very excited for him. It would actually be hard to find any negativity on this post. Unfortunately, none of these players are local, okay? They're all outside of China, and the people that had a problem with paper games were in China. It wasn't all of them, but it was a very loud and toxic chunk
Interesting.
of the community. So much so that they would take this to ridiculous levels, sending literal cow
What?
poop to the studio. Many players
What?
would go around knife in front of the building, trying to make their way in. Here are some images, with a third
Oh.
image being censored with the weapon. I wish this was a joke. Here's a 9-second clip that was recorded in front of the studio that kind of shows you the chaos that they were dealing with after Valko's announcement, with someone just screaming insults towards the studio. Watch. And so soon after, this would start being reported on
Love and Deepspace controversy escalates as angry Chinese players send funeral flowers, cow dung, and ritual items to Paper Games' office. The backlash reportedly intensified after Paper Games unveiled Aoyun as the game's newest male character. The game lost 1 million followers across Chinese social platforms amid the outrage. Protests turned physical, with players sending funeral flowers, cow dung, curse banners, and ritual items to the studio's office. In Chinese culture, such items symbolize death wishes, or spiritual cleansing, highlighting the intensity of the reaction. This was one of the most extreme community backlashes seen in mobile gaming, raising serious questions about player developer dynamics in life
by
servant.
international media outlets. And on top of all this, Love and Deepspace would lose over 1 million followers across all their Chinese social platforms. This was a very big deal, and it was becoming uncontrollable. No matter what they tried to quell the
I
damage, it was
don't understand why it's a big deal. Like, okay, the certain aspects of it I can understand were not good, but I don't understand the character itself being viewed as bad. The trailer released for the character, where it was describing that it's okay for people, like, for a woman's space to be invaded. That's not appropriate, obviously. But I don't understand why the character is disliked so heavily. Because what? Because the character is viewed as gay because he's represented by a bear or a wolf, but not like in the queer community, more so as like a bear or a wolf. That confuses me.
done. But that didn't mean they wouldn't try anyway. On June 27th, 2026, just 5 days after the initial announcement of Valko, Love and Deepspace would make an announcement for the global audience, in which they say, "Dear Deep Space Hunters, recently the development team has received a great deal of feedback and many suggestions regarding the game. We have also heard your concerns about the team's capacity to consistently deliver high-quality content in the future." So this has to do with their inconsistent updates, right? We would therefore like to take this opportunity to respond with the care that your trust and expectations deserve. From the very beginning, we have hoped to make Love and Deepspace a romantic world that continues to grow alongside every Deep Space hunter, a world filled with more diverse experiences and lasting companionship. This hope has guided us throughout the game's development and remains at the heart of everything we are working toward. The development of Valko and his related content is part of the long-term content plan for Love and Deepspace. However, we recognize that the way the information about Valko was presented did not give sufficient consideration to your expectations and concerns regarding the game's future content plans. As a result, many hunters have been left with questions and worries since Valko's initial announcement. We sincerely apologize for any frustration and unease this has caused. We have also heard your concerns about whether future content can continue to be delivered consistently without compromising on quality. Please be assured that the Love and Deepspace development team has continued to grow since the game's launch. The main story chapters you have been waiting for are currently in active development. The stories of Farspace Colonel Caleb and Onikinus leader Silas will continue, and a new series of Solar Slot Memories will also be arriving soon. The development team will continue to deliver richer game experiences and high-quality content on a consistent basis. We also understand that these concerns are not simply about the pace of updates. They come from how deeply you care about Love and Deepspace and the love interests who have been by your side throughout this journey. It is because you cherish every moment you have shared with them that you hope this companionship will continue for many years to come. For this reason, we want to make this commitment to you. The stories, companionship, and future of every love interest will always remain an essential part of the long-term plans for Love and Deepspace. This will not change for any reason. Enclosed with this letter are Deep Space Wish 10 and Empyrean Wish 10. Please log into the game before July 23rd to claim them from your in-game mailbox. Once again, we would like to thank every Deep Space hunter for the encouragement.
Please log in before July 23rd. July 23rd was literally 2 days ago. That's so weird to me how recent this was, because every time that I watch like one of these dramas unfolding, I'm always like, wow, this happened like 7 months ago. I'm so behind. And then this literally happened like a couple weeks ago.
This feedback and support you have given us throughout this journey. We know that it is your unwavering love and support that give meaning to everything we do and guide us forward. In the future, the development team will keep working hard to bring you more high-quality content and a better game experience worthy of your support. We hope you have a wonderful day in Lincoln City and many more wonderful days to come. Signed, the Love and Deepspace development team. And so look, this was in reference to the fact that in this game there's currency. Currency you can earn by playing the game that you can also buy. This announcement for
Yep.
Valko came out of nowhere. Some people were probably not prepared, didn't save up enough to be able to pull for his banner, and they didn't really want to miss out on the memory. This was Love and Deepspace acknowledging that the announcement came out of nowhere and that in the future they would keep them updated ahead of time, while also taking into consideration that they should probably have a more consistent schedule that takes every love interest into account.
At least they
This gave hope to
recognize
many
that.
global players who might have had
That's
grievances with the
improvement.
game's development schedule, and many had a lot of optimism. However, global players were not their main concern right now. It was the Chinese players, and they were about to pull out a very dirty strategy to punish the developer into kneeling down and obeying their wishes, which is removing Valko from the game. And that strategy involves getting the attention of the Chinese state. And so, remember that good old test record A0731? Yeah, well, even though it came out in April, it would get brought out again in June during the Valko controversy, and so a new narrative would form. Paper Games is an enemy of the state, and they have a Japanese mole inside that is there to mock the Chinese people and their suffering. So within just a few days after Valko had been announced, this narrative would spread like wildfire, so much so that it would force Love and Deepspace to make a statement on the 29th of June talking about it, as well as the other grievances the community had. It would be posted on the Chinese social media website known as Weibo, and here's what they'd have to say after translating it through Google Translate. Recently, we have noticed many discussions circulating online regarding the game and promotional content of Love and Deepspace. We sincerely apologize for any misunderstandings and negative experiences caused. Thank you for your continued attention, and we will humbly accept opinions from all parties. To avoid such content affecting the gaming experience of our players, we would like to clarify and explain these issues as follows. Number 1. Date controversy in the world's depths. Harmony with light.
Recently, we have noticed many discussions circulating online regarding the game and the promotional content of Love and Deepspace. We sincerely apologize for any misunderstandings and negative experiences caused. Thank you for your continued attention. Okay, I still don't understand at this point why people are upset. At this point, this doesn't seem that big of an issue. It's just maybe I'm just like behind on something. I genuinely don't understand why this is a problem for people. Like, here's my thing. Again, I mentioned this literally like 10 minutes ago, 5, 10 minutes ago. I understand the trailer for Valko coming out and like people not liking because of the fact that it kind of promoted the concept that a woman's space is allowed to be invaded by a man. And the whole point of this game is to be a safe and like an otome game for women. So it's meant to be like a safe place for them to feel loved, cared for, that sort of stuff. But the thing is, that's completely understandable that people are upset about that. I understand that. My thing is that why are we upset about the character being presented as like a bear or a wolf? And like why is that an issue? Am I just like really out of the loop or something? Like I don't know.
And dust.
Let's just
We received
continue.
feedback from players that the Harmony with Light and Dust update on April 21st contained a number that could easily lead to misunderstandings. We took this very seriously and immediately conducted an internal investigation. It has been confirmed that the number is a fictitious date, a placeholder without any actual meaning, and has not been packaged in any way.
Right, I forgot about the weird jokes that they kept making. Oh my god, I forgot about that. Like the 731 joke and the don't let the you boil in a pot or whatever thing. That yeah, no, that's kind of fucked up that they did that. But like about the actual character, I don't see any issues. I think they kind of just fucked up on the presentation of the character that they did. Like, and that's like obviously the presentation of the character matters because if you fuck up the presentation, nobody's gonna want the character around.
We
So
fully understand the potential misunderstandings that this random number may cause and will complete the online modification as quickly as possible today. This issue exposed the lack of sensitivity among some members of the development team. We will strengthen training to prevent such situations from recurring. We will also further improve our internal review mechanism, paying attention to every detail to ensure the quality of online content. Number 2. controversy arising from some marketing copy. In the promotional material released on June 25th, marking 3 days until the livestream's countdown, the phrase "taking a bath in a pot" was
That's
accused
the
of containing a
phrase.
suggestive reference. In reality, this copy was a teaser for the upcoming Home 2.0 update's kitchen gameplay, written in a non-everyday style to match the livestream's Strange Tales of Rules theme. So this is badly
They're
translated, but what they
backpedaling
were saying
hard
was the
about
teaser was
this.
like in a horror theme, and this was meant to match this horror theme. This is why they used that phrase. It had nothing to do with that incident that happened in 2024. They would then continue and say, due to the widespread circulation of misinterpretations for this content, all related content has been removed to avoid unnecessary confusion for players. We urge everyone not to believe such rumors. Furthermore, the inviting the wolf into the house text in the trailer released on June 28th, The Law of Instinct, is simply a copywriting element related to the new male protagonist's werewolf identity and has no other meaning. We have noticed some controversy surrounding this text. To avoid affecting the player experience, this text and all related materials will be uniformly changed to Pure Love Wolf King. And then in the last part of the statement, they would clarify, we don't make characters specifically for one audience or demographic. This idea that it's a Western male character is just not true. And also, this rumor about us being an all-gender-oriented game is utterly absurd, ignoring our consistent positioning as an otome game. In other words, no gays allowed, okay? This is a female-only game. Stop with these stupid rumors. They'd also defend themselves. As a Chinese company, we have always considered this our responsibility and have never stopped promoting Chinese culture overseas. Like, they just took a stand here and reminded everyone, yo, these rumors are absurd. We do so much to spread Chinese culture overseas to Western players. You saying that we only care about Western players and don't care about Chinese players is ridiculous. And so this post would get over 1.6 million likes, but also over 200,000 comments. The top comment would be saying, I'd rather take Valco off the shelves, with over 136,000 likes. The reply to that would be, remove Valco from the platform. And another reply would say, our demands are, number 1, remove Valco. Number 2, compensate for gacha resources. And number 3, the production team should deeply reflect on their own problems and issue an apology, while promising to not add any new male leads. In fact, all the top comments are just shitting on the developer, saying that they deserve all the controversy going their way, and that this was a bad statement. Now new rumors were popping up. Paper Games was arrogant. They don't know how to apologize. They don't know how to take a step back. They're an enemy of the state, and they're not even apologetic about it. What didn't make it any better to Paper Games, honestly, is the fact that they would replace the 731 number with 611, which was another tragedy that involved Japanese forces invading the town of Daojiao. 3,000 villagers were rounded up and killed, and you know how stories go with the Japanese, okay? They're literally the evil villains of Asia up until after World War II, when they became the anime central capital of the world. I really need to specify here though, I haven't seen a single screenshot showing that whole 611 mistake. This most likely seems to be yet another false rumor created on the Chinese internet that spread even to the West. But like the other things so far in this video that you've seen, it had already spread like wildfire and created yet another rumor involving the CEO. Paper Games wasn't just an enemy of the state, the CEO also was. Why? Because he studied in a Japanese university by the name of Waseda University as an economics major. So he was the internal mole. He was the one who put 731 on purpose because he hates China. He's actually a secret Japanese citizen. But here's where things truly got out of control when it came to the whole 731 situation. I know, it already got out of control. They're being made to be an enemy of the state. How could it get any worse? Well, you would have multiple media outlets in China create articles in which they would attribute the number 731 with Valco specifically. You'd even have the news publication Beijing Daily, which is of course government affiliated, talk about this too, and talk about 731 and how it's associated with Valco. In reality, this was false. This was an archive file that was talking about lore relating to Xavier. But this misinformation had spread so far and wide because it was literally being talked about by news publications that many took it as fact. Oh, so Valco is not only ugly and looks like a Westerner and doesn't care about the Chinese audience, but he's also an insult to Chinese culture and China as a country because 731 is associated with his lore. That's false, and many Westerners also were caught with this misinfo, believing it to be true. This was becoming a very big problem to Paper Games. I mean, these news publications were publishing shorts in which they talked about Paper Games' statement and were associating 731 with Valco. And other than just media publications, you even have associations, like the China Women's Association that is affiliated with the government, also make content expressing outrage at the whole letting the wolf in sentence, or the whole never bathe in the pot sentence, pushing the narrative further that this game is not safe for women, that it's their enemy. They weren't alone in this regard, because there would be another association by the name National Defense Education that would make a blog post echoing those same statements. But believe it or not, things would get even worse. The people who
What?
wanted Valco gone wanted the attention of the government by any means necessary. And other than creating the narrative of enemy of the state, they would also do something else that's sure to attract eyes from the government at any given moment in time. And that is creating countless complaints to the China Consumers Association, saying that they got scammed by this company. Over 60,000 verified complaints were made in the span of just a few days. And honestly, it doesn't even matter if they're real or not, okay? This is a way that many Chinese people boycott or target companies that have screwed them in some way. Because
What the fuck? That is insane. Oh my god, I don't know
the
how I feel about
40,000
that.
complaint mark, automatic safeguards get triggered at any given company. This means that automatically the China Consumers Protection Agency contacts that company just to see what's going on. And so, with this unbelievable and unprecedented pressure that was put on Paper Games, even with them already addressing this and doubling down, kind of defending themselves, on June 30th, they would post a letter pretty much announcing that they were going to cancel Valco's release and not release any more love interests in the game for the foreseeable future.
Okay, so the community gets what they want. The community gets an apology from what I'm seeing. They get the apology that they wanted. They get the like no extra love characters or love interests. So the community gets what they want. They win,
Just
right?
as a reminder, it had been barely a week since the first trailer for Valco, and they were already canceling everything. So this is like as if Genshin announced an entirely new region and a week later decided to cancel the entire thing and said, hey, by the way, no more regions. The game's done. This also meant that all the story content that was finally going to come to the game after a 6-month content drought was going to be canceled too. It genuinely could
How
not have been worse for anyone who likes this game.
of
To
course they
announce such a big update and cancel it after barely a week, this had never happened, especially for a game of this scale. This post would be viewed over 26 million times and would have over 40,000 replies. Many of the top ones were ratioing it. They were in utter disbelief that Paper Games would bend to such toxic and loud people in the Chinese community. This game was created to make you, as a woman playing it, feel seen and acknowledged, and yet, with this announcement, they had essentially told all global players, we don't care about you even existing. That's how it felt, even though they were put between a rock and a hard
Why not keep Valko up the rewards, commit to no more future love interest, and actually releasing content for all 6 guys at a more regular pace, including free content? Isn't this considered consumer fraud? You've been advertising with Valko that caused people to download, play, and potentially spend money in game. You're not listening to all. You're not listening at all to any of us. Valko was the only real good thing we were getting, and so many of us were excited for him. I've been so excited to finally experience his story, and you're taking him away from us instead of just communicating and addressing the actual. If you really decide to cancel Valko because of some really, really disgusting human beings prepared to lose all of us, you didn't even give him a chance. Worst company to ever exist.
place. Even though they were cornered by what was going on in China, this still felt horrible for just about anyone who ever played this game. You go anywhere, whether it be Twitter, Reddit, any other place this community was present in, and you would see just the disbelief. They genuinely couldn't believe this had just happened. But honestly, if you took a step back, none of this really made sense. This was really overblown for no reason, and anyone with common sense could see that. A huge chunk of Paper Games revenue came from global players, so how come they were just forced to bend the knee so quickly? Well,
Yeah, I'm like honestly so confused. Why would you cancel an entire character because of like just maybe change the lore, maybe change the approach of announcing the character, maybe change the demographic of who you're trying to advertise the character to, not completely cancel the entire character and all of the content towards the character. That's crazy. What?
that's because they had become the worst thing you can ever be in the country of China, becoming an element of chaos. Okay, so let's get one thing straight. There was a timeline to this, and it wasn't always about being an enemy of the state or whatever. This had started out with consumer dissatisfaction about Valco, about the fact that he looks gay and Western and all that stuff.
I can't get over that they're upset because he looks gay and Western. Does he actually look Western? Like, I don't know what Western is considered to look like, but like, he looks really cute. Like, what? I don't. Oh, hi, baby, no money. I don't see an issue with him. Like, is it because of his leather jacket? Are we upset about his leather jacket? Is that what looks Western to people? Like, genuinely? I'm like trying to see what's another character in the game? Caleb. That's the only other character I can think of from the game. This doesn't look Western to you guys? That's a cool fit. That drips really cool. But like, how do these character like how does this character look? Uh, how does that character look non-Western, but this character does look Western? I'm like really confused.
But then Chinese media publications would start twisting it into something way bigger than it actually was. It went from consumer dissatisfaction to women's safety to becoming an enemy of the state with 731 to paper games refusing to take responsibility, being arrogant. And eventually, because of how badly paper games was portrayed in media, this wouldn't just be about, hey, let's just cancel this character. This would be like, hey, you deserve more punishment as a company. You deserve to go bankrupt. And hence why they had become an element of chaos. So what is that exactly? Well, it's a term I came up with, I guess. But in China, the most important thing that has to be maintained is order. As soon as something goes against that, as soon as something interferes, then they become a problem. A great example of this actually happened to Hoyoverse back in 2021. The reason? Well, Hoyoverse had released a music video of Honkai Impact characters dancing in bunny suit outfits. They had not released it in China. Chinese players took grave offense to this and started calling Hoyoverse a traitor, an enemy of the state. Hence why someone tried to assassinate the CEO. Yes, it was over the stupidest thing imaginable. Yeah.
What? Somebody tried to assassinate somebody else over a video that wasn't released to China? Police have arrested an individual who allegedly planned to assassinate the founder of MiHoYo, the Chinese studio behind Genshin Impact. According to various reports, the man was reportedly armed with a knife and can't see that, managed to infiltrate the MiHoYo building before he was apprehended on April 24th. Unfortunately, no one was harmed in the incident, and the would-be assassin is now in police custody. Crazy.
But that wasn't even Hoyoverse's biggest worry, because people would employ the same strategy used against paper games, mass reporting Hoyoverse to the Chinese Consumer Protection Agency and creating a narrative online that they are an enemy of China. Eventually, this would prompt them to delete that Bunny Girl dance music video off every platform imaginable, while also releasing an apology. They would give their players some crumbs as a reward, while giving the Chinese players almost 3 times the amount of rewards, apologizing to them for doing this unforgivable thing. I had made a video about this almost 2 years ago, so it really shows that even a company like Hoyoverse is not immune to this. This was
Bunny
after
Girl
Genshin
skin almost cost the life of
Impact had
Genshin
come
Impact
out, by the
CEO.
way. The way they were able to get past this without any issues was by apologizing, removing the music video everywhere, and having the CEO join the political party of China. This was him pretty much saying, hey guys, I'm not your enemy, I'm not a traitor, look. Because when the government gets involved, everything becomes existential. And this is exactly what was happening to paper games. On the 8th of July 2026, the Ministry of Public Security would publish a statement about what was going on with Love and Deepspace. I mean, this is pretty much the government saying this. They'd say, recently, an online game targeting female players has sparked widespread controversy. The game features a storyline where the male protagonist breaks into a woman's home late at night, accompanied by offensive promotional slogans such as, "What's wrong with letting a wolf into the house?" packaging the illegal act of trespassing as a romantic encounter. This kind of entertainment-driven, traffic-driven creative work disregards public order and morality, crosses legal boundaries, and may ultimately endanger public safety. The safety of women living alone is a serious public issue concerning personal rights, social order, and the protection of women's rights, and it is by no means material for arbitrary adaptation or meme creation. Chinese law strictly protects citizens' rights to housing, and no one may illegally intrude. China's criminal law clearly stipulates that those who commit the crime of illegal intrusion into a residence can be sentenced to imprisonment for up to 3 years or detention. If a game packages such
Which is good, as it should be. People should not be breaking into other people's homes.
behavior as fun interaction, it may be suspected of promoting and glorifying illegal and criminal methods, which is not only a disregard for the authority of the law, but also blatant transgression against the spirit of the rule of law. Even more dangerous is its intangible erosion of public perception.
So, like, what are we arguing?
This creative logic that prioritizes traffic can easily mislead the public, especially causing cognitive biases in minors whose minds are not yet mature, weakening their vigilance against dangerous behaviors and seriously undermining the effectiveness of public safety education. I just want to point out that this game is not for minors, okay? It's like
It's not for minors, no. I don't think we should bring minors into this type of conversation because I'm pretty sure minors should not be playing games like this. If they are, um, that's not good. Maybe we take the phone away from the kids. But I don't think minors need to be addressed in this situation because I doubt most of the people who are actively playing the game are minors. Okay, actually, no, I take that back. I assume a lot of people playing these types of games are minors, or at least start playing the game when they're minors. But I feel like the target of this like argument or this statement should not be towards minors. Obviously, like creative logic that prioritizes traffic can be easily misled to the public, especially causing cognitive bias to minors whose minds are not yet mature, weakening their. Okay, I can understand that. If, like, a minor, for example, sees something online where it's like, break into a woman's house that you really like to show that you like them, that's gonna, like, mess with minors' minds because they're still learning and stuff. But I don't think that that should be the focus of this type of conversation. I think the focus should be we should not promote breaking and entering or invading women's privacy or their homes for the sake of a love interest.
it's mature only 18 plus. But still, this was the narrative and you couldn't do anything about it. They would then continue. Some might argue that games are games and reality is reality. They shouldn't be confused. However, facts have shown that online game content that crosses ethical boundaries can seriously negatively impact the healthy development of teenagers. In
Yes.
2018, 15-year-old Xiao Tang became deeply addicted to a violent video game. Seeking the thrill of killing in the virtual world, he brutally murdered his 23-year-old female neighbor. This tragic case should serve as a stark warning to everyone.
I'm gonna say right now that the argument that violent video games, lead to violent children is not accurate. To a certain degree. I think in very rare cases do video games create violent children or people who are violent because of the video games. It's very, very rare. Most people do not associate video games with the concept of real life, especially if you were raised with video games. You're not gonna be like, oh, yes, a video game like Fortnite is making me violent because I play video games. I think it's more so an argument that video games can lead to addiction because of the thrill of the video games, the adrenaline from like getting a kill or beating a level and stuff like that can become addictive because now you're seeking that thrill and then you stop getting it as much because you're getting good at the video game and stuff. So you start seeking it through like continuing to play video games and getting like like obviously like that's how addiction works. I think it could be argued that more frequently it's more likely that a video game is going to lead to addiction of video games rather than somebody going out and killing another person because of video games. I think it's really rare that a teenager or that an adult or a kid is going to go and murder somebody because of a video game. I think it's more likely that there are reasons for the teenager or the kid or the adult outside of the video games that led to them becoming violent. Um In most cases, there's normally something else going on that's not just the video games that are leading to this. Whether that be like they have antisocial personality disorder or they grew up in an abusive or toxic household. It's not just the concept that the video games created their violence or their thrill of being violent. And if it did, there were probably other signs than the video games that would tell that the kid would do this.
Then have an image of Valco, so Valco was acknowledged by a government agency as being a source of a problem, and then they would continue. The virtual space
I
created
like
by
these
online
words.
games
I
is
like
never a
Fallout
lawless zone. Laws and regulations, such as the regulations on the governance of online information content ecology and the regulations on the protection of minors online, clearly prohibit the production and dissemination of content that may incite minors to imitate unsafe behaviors, induce bad habits, or violate social morality, thus setting a clear bottom line for the creation of online game content.
So in China are like video games that are like Fortnite and video games like that are battle royales like Call of Duty and stuff like that, are they banned in China? Like can you not play those types of games in China because they're violent? And like it says that any game created by like any game that's can incite minors to imitate unsafe behaviors, induce bad habits, or violate social morality are not allowed. You're not allowed to produce or create this sort of stuff, which is really interesting to me, especially since there are gotcha games. And gotcha games are very good at creating the habit of what's it called? Are very good at getting people into gambling at young ages, um, leading to gambling addictions, but the unlikeliness that a person is going to kill somebody because of a video game, they're not allowed to play video games. That could, like, what? That confuses me. That confuses me.
As of now, all relevant characters and storylines in the game have been taken offline for rectification, a move that addresses public concerns. However, taking it offline is not the end. Deeper reflection is needed. This incident serves as another warning to the industry. Any content production that deliberately blurs the lines of illegality, glorifies dangerous behavior, or undermines public safety will ultimately be subject to legal sanctions and public resistance. So here they were acknowledging that Valco got removed, that this was the right step, but that deeper reflection was needed, indicating potentially even further censorship now that the game had a target on its back. They would then end this by saying, to address the chaos in online game content, a comprehensive approach is needed across the entire chain of creation, review, and regulation. Game companies must abandon profit-driven motives and improve their multi-tiered content risk control and review systems to eliminate misleading and harmful content at the source. Regulatory authorities should adhere to strict governance, refine review standards, and resolutely hold accountable companies that overstep their bounds and violate regulations. Simultaneously, families, schools, and society must work together to strengthen legal and safety education for teenagers and safeguard the healthy growth of minors.
Honestly, like the way that they're going about it is wrong. But I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that we should be protecting minors from media that could be considered unsafe to them. And I don't disagree that we should play video games and like video games should be promoted in a non-profit way, that they should be played without having to spend money. I do agree with that. I don't think that I don't think that we should go about like this in that way. I think that there are better ways to go about discussing these opinions and stuff, but obviously it's a government agency that's talking about this, so they're going to go about it in their own way. They're going to talk about it in their own way. And they're going to be very strict with it because a lot of government is very strict. It's falls under their rules and stuff, their laws about video games and stuff. Um so but I, again, I don't think that we should be inherently um I don't think we should inherently be against the like protecting minors. I think that minors should be allowed on social media. I think that minors should be allowed to interact with the content that they want to interact with, but I don't think we should be posting like gore online and stuff like that. Even for anybody should not be allowed to see that. That's fucked up. Um, so, and obviously, I'm a firm believer in the fact I've spent a lot of money on microtransactions. I'm a firm believer that we should not focus our games on profits, because games should be free to play in all regards at the end of the day. So
Title of this, by the way, was Glorifying Intrusion is Unacceptable Even in Online Games. This was
oh,
a disaster. Attracting the eyes of a government agency like this and having them write such a staunch article against you was the literal last thing you wanted as a Chinese company. You'd rather have your entire executive board get fired than this. Now, look, the global
makes
side
sense.
was already in disbelief, and I'm going to talk about how they did their best to fight against this decision. But seeing that Chinese media was talking about this and seeing that this article from the Ministry of Public Security had been made, many global players would start spreading misinformation. Like this person right here would make a post with over 2 million views in which they would write a fan fiction saying that someone powerful in the Chinese government got angered enough that now all otome in China could be permanently affected. Or how this post with over 1 million views would say that allegedly the dev team is threatening to leave Paper Games if Valco isn't reinstated. These things are not confirmed in any way, shape, or form. But this is what happens when the developer of a game is on a different internet than yours, using an entirely different language. But global players, as well as many Chinese players, weren't simply going to sit idly by watching their favorite game get
Love that
destroyed
they're
right in
all
front of them.
cosplaying
And so,
as
a
Falco.
global movement would be born overnight. A movement that is unprecedented in terms of scale that I have never seen before. Barely 24 hours after Paper Game's very unpopular announcement saying that they were going to remove Valco from the game, a new topic would start trending on Twitter with hundreds of thousands of posts within 24 hours and millions of posts within 1 week. The hashtags Valco is loved and We love Valco would go absolutely viral, and global players would demand that he come back home. As I mentioned earlier, this was overblown, and the audience for Love and Deepspace wasn't stupid. Oh, boo-hoo, he snuck into your home? Well, what about the other love interests? Silas kidnaps you, Raphael and Caleb stalk you, and one of them is your adopted brother that you grew up with as a kid, and then later on, when you both grow up, you're there just scissoring like chimpanzees in heat. This just didn't make any sense. And while yes, 731 was a really stupid mistake, it was in the game for
Yes.
2 months before people somehow now finally noticed and took offense to it. It was overblown, it felt staged, and it just didn't make any sense. But Paper Games had made their decision. They removed Valco and actually took this seriously. And so, the consequences immediately took place. If they thought that these toxic Chinese players were their biggest problem, they had no idea what they were dealing with. A huge chunk of silent Chinese players that weren't toxic and crazy would be very disappointed in Valco's cancellation. In fact, you can track revenue that the game makes in China, and while there were many people frustrated over Valco looking Western or gay or whatever, their revenue would only start taking a dip after they had canceled Valco, showing us two things. The
Yeah.
first being that they might have underestimated how many Chinese players actually liked Valco, and the second being that maybe Western players also underestimated how many Chinese players were going to boycott this game because of the whole 731 situation. Within just a week, they would lose 50% of how much they would usually make. Within less than 24
Yeah.
hours, they would lose over 100,000 followers on multiple platforms, and eventually they'd lose over 100,000 on TikTok, and would lose so many on Instagram that they would end up privating their profile. They would also get
That's
absolutely review bombed
crazy.
on the Apple App Store with a rating that's now below 3 out of 5. And on
I've never
Google
seen that
Play,
before.
their rating is now
I
1.3.
that's is it actually that freaking low on Google Play? Love and Deep Space. 1 point oh, it went up a little bit. It's gone up a little bit, the rating, but not by much. Not by much. It by like, oh my god, it's gone up point 0.4. That's crazy. What is can I see the reviews, please? Oh, I'm not allowed to see the reviews. That's crazy though.
Out of 5. One of the most abysmal ratings I've ever seen. Hell, people were so
Yeah.
pissed that they brought back a good old tradition that had occurred during the first anniversary of Genshin, which was not only review bomb the game, but also review bomb Google Classroom. If bad reviews start reaching Google Classroom, you know that this controversy is massive. At the same
Review
time, you'd have
bomb Google Classroom? What does that even mean? How do you review bomb Google Classroom? Do you just go on Google Classroom, review bomb, like post really bad reviews, but then like for a different game, like they're review bombing Google Classroom for Love and Deepspace for Valco.
Petition on iPetitions get made that has over
Look at how many signatures that has. 243,031 signatures. And it needs 250,000. And then is that like what they're hoping will, like that's how many signatures they're hoping will bring back uh Valco? Is that what they're hoping?
240,000 signatures to bring back Valco, and you'd also have a change.org petition with almost 100,000 signatures now, with change.org's own social media page making a tweet about it, bringing
A popular mobile game is at the center of a fan campaign after its developer canceled the introduction of what would have been the game's sixth love interest. More than 446,000 Love and Deep Space players have signed a petition calling on game developer Infold to release Valco as originally planned. Do you want Valco released? Let us know in the comments. We can read or sign petition. You can read or sign petition at blah blah.
more attention towards it. One Love and Deepspace player would take this even further and report the game to the Consumer Protection Agency of their country, Mexico, because this was a false promise in their opinion. This is a product, something was advertised, and then withdrawn, which makes it false advertising. All of Love and Deepspace social media would get flooded with hashtags such as Bring Valco Back. Even their ads on TikTok would get absolutely flooded. Compared to this, what was going on in China was nothing. Everything here was being absolutely invaded. And to show the developer that this was financially a really bad mistake on their end, someone would create a website in which you could enter how much money you spent on the game and attach a
I'm sorry, I don't know how much money I've spent on video games, so I could never participate in one of these things because I've either spent no money in the video game or spent so much money in the video game that I just can't keep track of it anymore. Or I've been playing the video game so long that I genuinely don't know how much currency I've bought or how much money I've spent in the game to be able to know. So like, I don't know. I
message to
definitely
it.
couldn't
So
participate in
far,
something like
the
this.
amount of cumulative money that was spent in the past by players who chose to support Valco is now over $15 million. I mean, look at all these messages behind that huge number. They were screaming to Paper Games that they were making a mistake here. But while the frustration's understandable and their socials being brigaded was to be expected, what really stood out here was how a big chunk of the global audience decided to protest. While Valco haters were busy sending manure and other things to the HQ of Paper Games, the global audience that wanted Valco in the game decided to instead use their money for good. Some would fundraise enough money to buy a billboard in Times Square saying "Bring Valco Back," and this billboard crowdfunding strategy would occur all over the world, in New York, in the Philippines, in Malaysia, in Thailand, hell, even in Peru. This was them truly showing solidarity between each other, even though they came from such different countries and regions.
People
But I
spending money on
mentioned this audience using their money for good, and that's exactly what they did in Valco's name. They would donate to a women's shelter in Canada and say that this donation is from Valco. They would donate over $44,000 for the Guangxi flood relief in Valco's name as well. This was a place that was hit by severe flooding in China, and these Valco enjoyers were pretty much helping them out. You'd have a Love and Deepspace player that normally spent $1,500 every 2 weeks on the game decide to instead
$1,500 every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks? What job are you working where you have $1,500 to spend every 2 weeks? That's not even. That is 2 weeks of my paycheck. That is 2 weeks, and I don't even. What? How are you spending that much money on a video game every 2 weeks? How are you spending that much money in general every 2 weeks? What? I wish I had that kind of money where I could just drop 1,500 every 2 weeks on my like video games or my interests. I wish I could have that much money because oh my god, that would be amazing. Like being able to just walk into the mall, buy a Build-A-Bear, or like buy a Hot Topic. That sounds amazing.
use that money to feed over 400 dogs in 3 different shelters, while again doing so in Valco's name.
Love that.
There are so many examples like this, with donations coming from global players for Chinese causes like
100
wildlife
chocolate milks,
conservation,
100
or
kids.
uniting to save an endangered
Love that.
species, or raising money over $20,000 for wolf conservation because Valco's a half wolf guy, and also donating over 100 chocolate milk bars to 100 kids in Indonesia, all while using Valco's name and appearance, making him out
Love
to be
that.
a symbol of hope rather than a symbol that threatened women's safety like in China. All of this was done in the hope that on July 9th, when 6.0 would come out, Paper Games would change their minds. They would still decide to release Valko even though they canceled him.
I I'm gonna be honest, I don't think they actually go through with that. I don't think that they
And they would take this
go through
activism
with
even
uncanceling the character. I feel like since there's still like 15 minutes left in this video, I don't think they're bringing back the character. Maybe they are. Maybe that's how that ends. Maybe it ends in 15 minutes because they brought back the character.
IRL, because Love and Deepspace would have a booth in Anime Expo in the US. There, they'd have different cosplayers meant to represent every love interest. But unfortunately, it seemed like there was one booth meant for Valko that was cancelled last minute. So what did they do? Did they bring cow poop or a weapon? No. Instead, they'd go around asking people to pick their favorite lad by placing a star around them, and Valko would receive the most stars. This was again meant to showcase the staff that we want Valko back. But while they did make it to
I
Anime
love
Expo
that.
on July 8th, they would start canceling different events that they were meant to attend. Like, for example, an event that was meant to take place in Japan, saying, after carefully reviewing the event content in light of changes to the in-game content, so removing Valko, we have decided to cancel the event. On that same day, they would also announce the cancellation of a massive event scheduled for Bilibili World, a huge event in China. And so by now, this was attracting all sorts of global media publications, with Jing Daily publishing an article titled, China's top otome game lost 70 million hearts in 10 days.
Okay, something that I'm realizing from like the characters being shown here. Obviously, this is Valko. These characters seem to, except for this guy, these four characters here. So whoever this guy is, it does not include him. Does not include the white-haired guy. These four characters seem to have very like soft, very like cutesy vibes to them. Their faces are very soft. Their jawline is not like as defined like up here. Their jawline isn't as defined. They don't have that very like sharp like sharp sharp flat chin. They're very like soft. They're very the word I'm looking for is soft. They're very soft, very like um that kind of vibe. And then this guy, this white-haired guy and Valko are very like um are very like buff looking, I'd assume. I assume Valko from what I've seen is very buff. This guy looks like he'd be buff too. Or at least like look max stuff like that. These two characters, they're very like sharp and very like uh masculine. Their appearance is more masculine and more like hard and stuff like that. Sounds so bad. But like not as like appealing. Not necessarily as appealing, but not like cutesy and stuff. They look more like smoldering. There's so many words I can use and I can't think of any. Especially Valko. Valko looks very very like um I can't think of the word. I genuinely cannot think of the word. But his character definitely seems like less like even this guy here. He looks still like these other four characters that like his features are very soft and stuff like that. Falco's features stand out a lot compared to the other five characters. Especially like these four. His features are not very soft and like they're more defined and stuff, and I think that that might not appeal to people as much because I've assumed these three and this guy here are very popular characters in Love and Deepspace. That's what I assume at least. I don't think this guy probably appeals as much. Um, I feel like this guy here, I don't know his name. This guy I think is the most popular character. This guy seems like he'd be the most popular. He has that like bad boy expression because you can see he has like that earring back here. He has like dyed hair. Obviously, your hair is not naturally that shade of purple. Um, he's like wearing a shirt that's like not proper like these two or this guy. He just gives off the vibe of somebody who's like promiscuous, and I think that that probably appeals largely to the Love and Deep Space community. So I think that this guy here is probably the like main person that people are drawn to in game, just because like they can get away from what their like people can get away from that like need for like, oh, I need to be feminine, I need to marry somebody who's like proper and all that sort of stuff through like these characters, I think he's probably the most popular. It's not him, it's probably these two. I think these two, like these three seem like the most likely to be the most popular.
China's top
I'm gonna assume this is Silas. I think this is Silas, right? This white-haired guy, I think is Silas.
Otome
So
game lost 70 million hearts in 10 days. Hell, even TV
yeah.
news channels were talking about this too. And hell, even Queso would talk about this somehow. A chatter would tell him about the drama, Queso would look into it and say, Love and Deepspace is wrong for scrapping its newest character, saying they didn't bring out the character because the fans said he was ugly, that's messed up. So look, all of this was meant to raise awareness, but also showcase to the Chinese government agencies that this game was not an element of chaos, it was an element of goodness. These donations in Valco's name were meant to spread positivity and goodness across the world. And to be honest, they did. Objectively speaking, that's exactly what they did. Instead of fighting fire with fire, the global audience decided to fight fire with good, with water. It was also done to show Paper Games just how much of a mistake they were making by listening to the toxic side of their fan base instead of the good side. The one that was willing to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to charities in Valco's name was the one who was really being hurt with this. The hope was that on
100%, 100%. And the fact that they're willing to not necessarily like stop spending, like, here's my thing that I think is actually amazing that they're doing. They're not just boycotting the system completely by not spending any money on the game or like not spending any money towards the game. What they're doing is they're taking the money that they normally would spend on the game and putting it towards good things to try to like give back and stuff like that. They're trying to like promote the game and stuff. I think that that's amazing. I think that that's a great thing that they're taking the money that like they're not completely boycotting it. They're obviously boycotting it because they're not spending the money on the game, but they're basically they're literally taking that money and spending it on fundraisers and on giving back to the community to prove a point, and it's benefiting people. I think that's amazing. I think that's a great idea. I think that people need to do this more. Like people need people should donate to communities, not necessarily in this regard because this regard is very severe and should not happen in many situations. But I think it's great that they're like genuinely trying to like give back so that so that Love and Deep Space's devs, so that Paper Games and the dev and stuff like that actually like bring back the character. Obviously, they're going to spend all their money again on the game, or at least most of the money on the game. But it's good that like in this moment, they're boycotting the system, boycotting the game by spending the money elsewhere to benefit humanity. I think
July
that's
9th,
great.
Valco would still somehow show up when they would open the app after updating, but unfortunately for them, that day would end up being the darkest in this community's history.
Yeah,
On
he did.
July 9th,
He wasn't
2026, the
there.
6.0 update would come out for Love and Deepspace. Many players downloaded it hoping to open the app and find Valco waiting for them there. Instead, they found nothing.
Nope.
No Valco, no new main story, just the new kitchen feature, and that was just about it. Some people would have issues downloading this update,
Crazy.
and so Love and Deepspace would make this post saying today's update has concluded while giving some pointers as to how to fix these errors, like reinstalling the game, for example. This would be the last post on their socials
so
up until mid-July. And so everyone would take out their grievances right here. It would get over 17,000.
Address me. I love the address me with the lock in motherfucker and the fucking like elephant.
Vibes.
I love
Again,
that.
ratioed multiple times with people in complete disbelief.
Ah yes, couple of questions. Where's Valko? When are you going to address what's been going on with Valko? Do you know the majority of your players base wants Valko back? Are you aware how much money you could stand to make by releasing Valko? Do you
How
understand?
could you? Instead of listening to the good side of the
So
community, people who are
condescending.
willing to put money where their mouth is
Like it's presenting as people genuinely asking these questions, but it's so condescending and I love it.
and donate to good causes in Valco's name, how could you listen to the toxic people who send you literal cow shit to your
Exactly.
offices? The global players felt like someone had put a knife in their back. And what didn't help was that this update was extremely buggy. I mean, there are certain things in here that my nightmares wouldn't even be able to conjure up. Like, what is this?
Oh my god.
What the fuck is this? Like, how does this even happen? Like, I don't even know. Like,
How are his hands, his legs, and he has no hands, and he has no legs. He has no arms, but his hands are below him, but he has no
Like, what
legs.
kind
What
of
the fuck?
code? What, like, how does this even occur? Here's my favorite glitch, personally. Like, what
Oh,
the fuck is that? Anyway,
guys, do you ever just get hungry and just want to go and like extend your arm across the table just to steal someone else's food? I know
the
I feel like
first
that
thing that
all the
players
time.
did after not seeing Valko was go to the love interest character selection screen and see whether the whole coming soon text was still there. And to their extreme disappointment,
It's
it
gone.
wasn't. It seemed like Paper Games was intent on the promise of no more new characters. This was the worst possible news for just about any player.
No new characters also means, well, okay, so for one, if they have no new characters, they could focus more on other characters that story is being neglected. But I highly doubt they're going to do that. I feel like they're going to focus more on the characters that are making the money rather than focusing on all of the characters. And even then, I don't even think the like, yeah. So I don't know. This seems like a dumb thing to do to not like, even if you're not gonna add a new character, I get that it probably takes months to create story and cutscenes and stuff like that for a character, but like maybe even just have like a half-ass like some story to release when because you didn't release the character that was meant to bring whole new story to the game. Have something like I feel like theoretically if you're a big time company, you have the extra resources. I don't think this is a big company, but they make billions of dollars. So I feel like they have the extra resources to have an additional team create like a backup story, have a team to create like a backup um cutscenes, that sort of stuff. Just so that in case like even like years ago, create the extra backup and then have it where like as you are like what's the word I'm looking for? As you release stuff, having that as a backup story and then like updating it with new graphics and new like stuff as your game updates and stuff. And then, oh shit, we fucked up and can't release the character that we didn't announce that we were releasing, and have a 6 month drought like content drought and we have nothing to release. Oh wait, would you look at that? We have our conveniently um done up content that we did years ago just in case this type of scenario happened. Wow, we're so smart. Like I feel like companies should do that, especially if you make billions of dollars. You should have the resources to do that.
The community was devastated. This was a character they were very excited for, that they couldn't wait to interact with, and he was gone as quickly as he had arrived to their lives. Slowly but surely, any remaining hope players had was being removed right in front of them. Like, for example, the Valko channel and the Love and Deepspace official Discord server would be deleted after the update would go live. And after all this time, things were really starting to set in for many players. So we're just getting a stupid rerun of a banner instead of a new love interest, a new main story update, new cards, new myths, new poses, new interactions. This wasn't just about Valko. This was the biggest update of the year, and all of a sudden, it's not coming anymore. And
Yeah.
remember how people were now fearful of further censorship now that the game had attracted multiple government agencies? Well, that's exactly what happened. All the love interests had a certain theme of an outfit in which they had numerology on them, numbers that signified different meanings. Well, they were all censored, or just straight up removed. Look at this, for example. It said 95, now it says gibberish. This was no doubt done to avoid any other 731 issues, and that's simply what happens when you become an element of chaos in China. Many global players and even Chinese players warned these extremely toxic and loud fans in China that any censorship, any removal of something in
Valko antis when the censorship they asked for starts affecting their
game
faves.
will
That's
result in
crazy.
even more censorship, and that's exactly what was happening. What added more fuel to the fire was that some rumors would start spreading about the role that Valko would have played in the main story, like the fact that he was the one who fixed Caleb's arm, or that he's a friend to Zane. These dynamics between the characters in the story is exactly why people played Love and Deepspace, and there they were, having to watch it get confiscated from them. And so people started drawing up comparisons to another game made by Paper Games called Infinity Nikki, which I made a video about around a year ago.
Okay, it's called Infinity Nikki, and for some reason my brain keeps trying to think it's called Infinite Nikki. It's called Infinity Nikki, which does not roll off the tongue very well. Infinite Nikki would be
That
better.
game had sudden censorship one day, where its tutorial level, its actual lore was changed for no reason. It was retconned, and even though the community had boycotted the game for months and created a large movement around it, Paper Games didn't budge. That terrible
crazy.
tutorial level is still there today. And
That's
what was also
crazy.
interesting is that the update that removed the tutorial level came with a lot of bugs. So at this point, it almost seemed like it was a pattern for any game Paper Games had made,
This
and it
seems
didn't
like a
really
major
inspire
pattern.
optimism. This was really the worst case scenario, but bear in mind, not just for global players, for Chinese players too, even the toxic ones. This Chinese player here would make it very clear in a post they made on Weibo. They'd say that with this outcome, everyone loses. More importantly, though, this game was a great outlet to promote overseas players' understanding of Chinese culture as well as Chinese success. Now, many of the players that were affected globally are not just vowing to boycotting Love and Deepspace, they're vowing to boycott any Chinese game. This player would go very hard on these toxic Chinese players, blaming them for halting the success of a Chinese company and therefore a Chinese cultural export, while also lamenting
It's crazy. What? We're boycotting all Chinese games? That's crazy.
the
What?
fact that this game was pretty much ruined, as well as its reputation in anything made in China. This also
Yeah.
led many Love and Deepspace players to look forward to a competitor's release called Silent Whispers, another 3D high-quality otome game in which they hope to be treated better. This trailer right here was released 2 months ago, and
That
all
guy
the
looks
top
like one of the
comments are
guys
just
from
people
Love and
being like,
Deepspace.
use this fumble from Love and Deepspace to rise, or goodbye Love and Deepspace, hello Silent Whisper, because this game would also be giving them something that they wanted for a long time, a PC client. It seemed like they were actually
Yeah.
listening, unlike Paper Games. But, it would take a lot at this point to fully crush all hope that the community had for Valko releasing. One player would point out, hey, listen, when 3.0 came out and Caleb came out, he didn't come out on the first day of the update. He came around in the second half of the update. So in other words, hey, when the second half of this update comes out on July 17th, let's hope that we'll find Valko there waiting for us. What they'd end up finding instead, though, pure and utter disappointment. At this point, Love and Deepspace Chinese revenue was doing horrendously bad, worse than it's ever been.
64,000? When it was making millions a day is crazy. That boycott's crazy.
On one day, they'd maybe make $200,000. Now they were making $60,000. Yes, it's still a lot of money, but it's less than half of what they made before. This showed that the Chinese audience, genuinely, the majority, the people who actually spend money, were outraged.
That is 6 days. They went from making their average to making like a third of
Still
their
of Valko
average.
not being
A fourth
included.
of their
And these were the
average.
consumers that
That's
mattered.
crazy.
And at the same time, as people were hoping that Valko would come in the second half of the update, they'd get an in-game notice saying that actually the second half would have a heartfelt gift for Zane, a free 5-star memory in which you interact with him. Now what's interesting is that
They're trying to get people to play the game again. They're trying to make it appeal to people again because of they see that their revenue is crashing and because of the fact that they see that shit's hitting the fan. They're trying to appeal to people again by being like, "Yeah, we'll release a free memory for you." And then it's not appealing to them.
the official social media accounts wouldn't make this announcement. As I said, it's been a ghost town since the 9th of July. It would only be announced through an in-game notice, okay? So further making their communication style even worse, and going against the promise that they made at the end of June saying we'll communicate more with you guys. What was really interesting though, was that there would be this Twitter account with the handle Z, with a Zane profile picture, that would leak the trailer for this memory, something that was meant to be posted by the official social media accounts. Once enough people found it, the account would delete itself. Many players pointed out that they didn't like the trailer because the face of the protagonist, which is the character that you create, the woman that you create, would be hidden throughout the trailer. The reason why this is a problem is because many Western players like to self-insert themselves into the game, while Chinese players don't like that. It seemed like even with this trailer, they were still trying to satisfy the most toxic players in China. However, even after all this, there was still hope because something positive out of China would come out on July 15th, 2026. Various media outlets would publish positive reports related to Valko, ones that might be deemed as government affiliated. To be specific, there'd be 5.
It's a
The
good thing.
first one being Reform Network, the second one being Tencent, the third one being Business Daily, the fourth one being NetEase, and the fifth one being Phoenix News. However, by July 16th, 4 of the 5 would be deleted, and only 1 would remain. And that would be the one posted on the website of the National Development and Reform Commission, otherwise known as the NDRC. The 4 others would be paid ads, and it would be mentioned at the end of the articles. I don't know whether it's players wanting Valko back that paid for it, I don't know whether it's Paper Games that did that, but it caused a lot of confusion. The reason why this article was a big deal was because it was somewhat state affiliated, and it talked about the efforts being made to bring Valko back globally in a positive manner. It would say, with overseas players continuing to voice their opinions, how can Chinese games translate global feedback into increased content? As of July 15th, the main
Releasing the
petition on the
character that they
overseas
were
petition
gonna
platforms
release.
iPetitions demanding the reinstatement of the romanceable new character Valko in the game Love and Deepspace had garnered over 240,000 signatures and 80,000 comments. Meanwhile, on Change.org's game petition page, 3 main petitions related to Valko received 96,000, 21,000, and 5,900 signatures respectively. This 2-week-long, cross-platform participation indicates that overseas users' demands have not subsided quickly despite the character's removal. Following the cancellation, overseas players' actions gradually expanded from petitions to fan art, charitable donations, and offline events. Unlike the initial comments and emotional expressions that emerged during the early stages of the game's controversy, the actions of overseas players have now continued beyond the originally scheduled launch date. In the comments section of the main petition page on iPetitions, some users stated that they were inspired by Valko to download, return to, or continue following the game, while others suggested compromises such as delays or modifications before release. This article will then take this further, giving us numbers, saying that 60% of the revenue from the game comes from China, but that the rest comes from global players, highlighting just how important their opinions are. This was significant because
Especially because, okay, so it's saying that it's significant because of the fact that 40% of the players are global. But it also shows that, like, a large portion of the players are also wanting Valko in the game, which, like, Chinese players especially, as well as the global players. Like, it's, I assume in the grand scheme of things, it's such a small actual, like, community that didn't want Valko, because there's a lot of people who do want him in the game, and a lot of, like, Chinese companies that are being paid, I assume, by players in China to post about Valko and stuff. It's pretty obvious that he is wanted in the game. So,
until now, everyone's data points were all over the place. This is a privately held company and they typically don't really reveal the demographic portions, but seeing that this is a government affiliated publication, these numbers hold more weight. And what really made Valko enjoyers optimistic while reading this article would be one of the final paragraphs, where it would say, whether Valko will be reinstated should be determined by paper games based on content quality, market data, and long-term planning. However, the continued growth of overseas petitions has provided a significant signal. When a character can generate signatures, creative works, charitable activities, and offline actions in multiple countries and regions, re-examining and product validation of them is not merely a response to public opinion, but may also be a repricing of global user needs and existing content investment. For a leading product like Love and Deepspace that already has a global user base, turning this feedback into richer content offerings and more refined overseas operational capabilities is perhaps more valuable than letting related demands remain outside the game in the long run. So for many Western players, this was as if the Chinese government was telling Paper Games, hey, whether you want to keep shooting yourself in the foot or not, that's just up to you, we don't really care. But you should probably reinstate him. So as I said, for many, this article was a celebration, like, oh my god, our efforts are actually doing something. And they kind of are. This article acknowledged all the good things they were doing. Like, these news were reaching China, which was wonderful. At the same time, it also see Chinese government agencies reminding people that malicious reviews, harming the reputation of businesses, online harassment, use of bots, paid accounts, AI-generated posts are against the law. So again, to many, this felt like they were directing this towards people who engaged in this behavior against Love and Deepspace, and that they were about to get in trouble with the law. This again signaled to people that, hey, maybe things are finally calming down. Some Chinese players would even use a VPN to get on Twitter to thank overseas players for the positive engagement they were bringing to the game and to Valko. Like this post saying, overseas sisters, without you all, none of this would be possible. Honestly, it was very wholesome. It was wonderful how a community so large could work together regardless of borders or distance or culture. But of course, in parallel, the toxic Chinese players had a movement of their own, and there was coordinated effort.
of course, they have a movement of their own. Of course, they would. And this video is like 4 minutes from being done. I assume Valko did not get reinstated.
On Chinese social media to counter any positive news coming out from Valko fans. But we just read a government-affiliated publication just highlight these positive things, so I don't know if it's working that well. When it came to Love and Deepspace though, as I said, they had a total media blackout. The only thing they had said ever since the July 9th update post would be a Facebook reply about winners of some giveaway or something or competition. Here, they'd indicate that they were going to post again on July 29th.
They're not even posting. That's crazy. They're gonna post again on July 29th. So like a couple of days from
Talking
now,
about the winners, while of course getting like 36 angry reactions. Does this
they're not even posting what? They're not even like updating or anything like that. Their community, they're just ghosting everybody, the 10 million players that they have.
mean that their media blackout will last until the 29th and then they'll post again regularly, maybe updating the community? Who knows? But so far, as I said, total media blackout, even with a new free memory coming out in game, still nothing, and no trailer as well, of course. So look, overall, the ball was now in the court of paper games. Are they actually going to bring back Valco? Or are they going to listen to this disgusting, toxic side of their community and throw their global community that's willing to donate to charities in Valco's name under the bus? It remains to be seen. But honestly, seeing that they had made the terrible decision of removing Infinity Nikki's amazing tutorial and backstory and refused to change it even after massive backlash and a big boycott, I just don't know if this developer is capable of listening to the community on such major issues. This also might truly be out of their hands. This might be out of their control completely, but we don't have proof. We can only assume on what's going on behind the scenes, and I prefer not to assume. And I do hope that Valco is brought back to this game. If you had to ask me though, I'm not very optimistic, but hey, seeing that this community has been very optimistic and donating to so many amazing causes, you know what? I'll change my mind and be optimistic too. Let's hope for the best, because if that happens, it'll be a wonderful story that will be never forgotten on the internet. And with that, I want to thank my wonderful community for making this very comprehensive Google Doc about the entire incident involving Valco, with sections like speculations, a glossary for people who have no idea about the game and the different terms used, memes, Twitter links. I'd even asked them to do this. They just did it by themselves because they're so passionate about this game.
Okay. I love that Mujin's community, I think that's how you pronounce his name, was so open to like helping him with this. The Chinese fans looked at the burger with the tomato they didn't want and closed down the entire restaurant because of it. It's crazy. This is like when your entire class gets punished by your teacher because one guy was acting up. So, okay, final thoughts about the controversy with Love and Deepspace. I think it is crazy, like absolutely bonkers that this has happened. I think that the fact that the creators of Love and Deepspace took such a drastic approach to a few, in the grand scheme of their entire player base, such a few, like the few amount of people, um, and like completely like canceled an entire character because a few people were toxic towards them, is not the reaction that a game company should have, especially a game company that is this successful with a game reaching like like top 3 highest revenue games ever, up there with like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. I think that's crazy. I think it's crazy that like the reaction that they had was unprecedented. It should not have been that reaction. I think that they could have went about it in a different way. They could have, like, for example, taken down the video or reanimated the video, that or even just like changed the words that they use. I assume it is not that difficult to take a video and like change the words. I assume it with like it's just editing that they would need to edit. Um so they could have just changed the words that were used so that it wasn't promoting um invasion of women's privacy. They could have not released something relating to the 7-3 like unit 731. That's fucked up. They shouldn't have done that. I think that they could have uh not made the jokes that they made. Obviously, there were some things that they just couldn't have done or things that they could have did and worked around. I think they did not need to like cancel the release of a character because of part of the community. Obviously, the majority of this community does not want like obviously the majority of this community does want the character. Even part of the like a large majority of the Chinese player base wants this character. I think that it's a drastic overreaction to cancel the release of a character, cancel the content that's being released, all that sort of stuff, because character was hated by a few people. I understand that it's scary because of the fact that the company was being threatened. Somebody literally went to the company's headquarters in China with a fucking knife. Like, that's scary, obviously. There's security though, so like they would have kicked the guy out, um but I think that this was a drastic like overreaction on their part. They should not have reacted this way to the backlash that they got. If any other game did that, where they unreleased a character or unreleased the content that they have because of some backlash, no game would ever release any new content or any new character. Look at like literally Genshin, for example. When Mizuki, a character in Genshin, was first announced, she was despised by the Western community because of the fact that they thought that she was kind of like they were over sexualizing Japanese culture with her release. But the Japanese players absolutely loved her design. They thought she was adorable. They thought that she was a great character. Obviously, she's really shit in the game and needs a buff, which I think she got in one of the new updates. I haven't played the game in a while. But if Genshin Impact, if MiHoYo, if Hoyoverse listened to their Western community and didn't release Mizuki, they would have this whole other problem because now the Japanese community that plays the game, the Japanese population of the game, would be upset because they actually did like the character. There's so many examples of this where there are characters who just wouldn't be released because every single character is going to have backlash. Every single character is going to be hated. Obviously, the community did not need to take it to this degree, and obviously, it like um obviously there's not many examples of the community taking something like this to that degree, but I do not think that the option for a character getting backlash on release is to unrelease the character and ruin it for the rest of the community. That is a awful idea. That is not how that shit should go. I think that it's kind of crazy that that was their reaction. Um, I think that also sorry, the community seems absolutely great. A large portion of the Love and Deepspace community seems great, especially since it's a female dominating community because the game appeals to females. I think that it's actually a community I would love to interact with at some points if I ever decide to play the game, which at this point I would not decide to play the game because I'm fully on board with the boycotting of the game. Fully on board with that, like 100%. Like Slay Queens fucking boycott that game. But I do think that the developers, what they did was not okay. The canceling of a character, literally like a week or something after the character was announced, and a couple of weeks before the character was released, is fucked up. I think that the shit that they were joking about, because I'm pretty sure they just meant it as jokes. I don't think they actually meant it in a malicious way. I think it's fucked up that they made those jokes, especially knowing the history of China towards the things that were going on with Japan in like World War II and before that. I think it's fucked up to make jokes about that, especially as a Chinese company. Knowing your history, that's fucked up. Um, Overall, I think the Love and Deepspace devs, like Paper Games, could do better about this. How long have I been streaming for? 3 hours. Damn, it took 3 hours to get through that, and I was having technical difficulty within like the first 2 hours. Um, so with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I'm gonna see if I can swap. I'm gonna see if I can swap to my camera on my other thing, but I don't think I can. Activate. Come on. I have to deactivate this webcam. Do 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 do. Deactivate. There we go. Okay, hello everybody. Now we're on the full screen. So thank you all so much for watching my stream. For the people that did pop in. Um, My cat's over there. You can see her in the background. I appreciate every one of you. Thank you for watching me react to stuff going on with Love and Deepspace. And I am very, very, very sorry for the technical difficulties within the first 2 hours of this stream. And I hope that the ending worked out. I was so paranoid at the end because I was like checking to see if like things were like if things were working or not. I was so paranoid. But thank you guys so much for watching. Audio input capture. I don't think that's what I want. I want to change my mic. Is my mic working? Audio input capture. I think it's working. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you guys have a lovely night or day, evening, dusk, dawn, whatever time it is for you. I hope you have a lovely, lovely night. I'm going to go make myself dinner, which is going to consist of ramen. Yay. Okay. Lovely night, guys. Bye.